What is everybody? This is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook video about Wendell and Wild and the zombie democracy versus communities, or what that means. And also, shout out to all of the Alt Goth PLC and all the Alt Goth PLC panels. Sorry, I'm turning my lights on, and all I'm my own lighting department. Speaking of all golf PLC, trying to properly light myself in the more spooky sort of environment. But anyways, uh, so we will be talking about this show and other things around it. Kind of wanted to focus more on that because it is some kind of there's some kind of plutocracy that pretends to be there's some kind of authoritarian regime that pretends to be a democracy. I think it's having a vote or something today. It's like, I think they call it the U.S. or something. Anyways, so the zombie democracy versus communities. Well, I'll zoom out a little bit before I get into that specifically. First off, I would just say I like the Wendell and Wild a lot. Thought it was really fun. It reminds me a lot of, obviously, Nightmare Before Christmas, a Tim Burton, goth stop motion animation bonanza extravaganza that everybody we've seen that movie in this house. That show is on at least once a month. It's been played probably hundreds of times inside of our household. We have a very spooky all goth household. My Holly was looking very very gothy and very nice and gothy, wearing skull lace attire today. So that's just, it's Halloween day every day around here. So so we obviously, I like that show a lot. Myself and Holly and the kid, the mini spooks, the mini spooky spooks, all liked it a whole lot. And so what's up, Victor? And anyways, I thought I might have Big Teal in extra early, but no. I'm sure we're gonna get probably at some point our other fellow all goth PLCs. But anyways, Wendell and Wild is a show that is it's animated. It is executive produced by Jordan Peele, so that makes something makes it extra special. It's a show that it's a lot like as I said, Corpse Bride, Nightmare Before Christmas, Coraline. I believe that the showrunners, it was the same showrunner who was behind Nightmare Before Christmas as well. And so that the look and feel of it, the style of animation is very similar, and the tone, obviously, it's like gothy, spooky, dark, demonic, Halloweeny sort of themes. But then the major difference, of course, is this one has a lot of it centers like a non-white universe and perspective. The main character is a black girl, so that makes a big whole difference. Jordan Peele and Key from Key and Peele. Is it Keenan Maynard Keen? I can't never remember his entire name with all the hyphens in there. But Key and Peele are the demons. They play Wendell and Wild, obviously, who are constantly getting into shenanigans. They are from a underworld run by Belzer, a giant demon the size of like a skyscraper, who needs constant replenishment of his hair follicles. He has his it's pretty really interesting and it's very creative and funny and interesting all at the same time. He has his Belzer is their father, who has to constantly have his hair follicles on his giant head, right? So it's really interesting, and it's kind of really out there because you have like the two demon children are walking around on their dad's head, pushing or they have their creepy demonic beast of burden, um, Sparkplug is pushing on their dad's head a. Let me see if I can get a picture of that since I'm talking about it. Wendell and Wild, they're hair farming, right? What are they doing? Forget the exact title, but they're on their dad's head, and they're walking around on their dad's head, with their beast of burden, dumping like dumping hair, like hair bits into the head. And then I think the spark plug has to drill a hole from that. Yeah, so they have their animal has to drill a hole. I don't know if I can get a picture of that. Hair farmers. So I can find the hair with the cream. Is it gonna come up? I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get that. Anyways, so yeah, so they're up on their giant demonic daddy's head, dropping hair follicles into his head, filling it with this magical special cream that kind of resembles toothpaste. It's like a white cream, and that makes you see, behind you can see the hair. You see the hair growing up. Those spiraling, kind of creepy spiraling little towers behind them. That's their dad's hair that they have to farm for him in their kind of prison house garb. You know, and they're finding random ticks on their dad's head. And anyways, so long story short, you know, so there's already like there's a if you watch it very closely, like rewatch it, there's a lot of underlying themes of the prison house. Prisons are centered in this thing. You know, kind of like unfreeness, undemocratic. You know, kind of being forced against their will to do things, being mistreated, and so it's kind of like there's a kind of parental control prison house is kind of like where it starts, like in the demon world. And the dad kind of doesn't let them do what they want to do, and Wendell and Wild want to, you know, they aspire to start their own theme park, and their dad has a theme park, and the theme park, let me see if I can get a picture of that because it's kind of funny. Belzer theme park. Belzer, their dad, the giant demon in Wendell and Wild, has a theme park on his chest. I don't know if you can see this. Yeah, so that's their dad, like from a further back aerial perspective, and the entire theme park in the underworld is on their dad's stomach. It's like literally sitting on his stomach. So at one point when the dad stands up, right, the dad is huge, right? The dad is like a mile tall or whatever. When the dad stands up, the entire theme park and everyone in the little demonic teacups and the roller coaster that's constantly having its rails snapped off and people go flying, and the Ferris wheel of doom, everything falls off his chest, and he destroys his own theme park by standing up at one point. Anyway, it's funny. But you know, and so Wendell and Wild, his children, right, are, you know, watching their dad run this theme park, and they're forced to, you know, basically like stay in his house and stay on his head. They sleep inside of their dad's nose, so that's weird. And he can actually like tries to sneeze them out at one point. They sleep in his nose, like literal, you know, like what is it? Bats in the cave, you know, like little boogers in his nose. And then during the day, they come out and go on his head and farm his hair for him. They're like forced labor, sentient Rogaine particles, you know. They just go around and make his hair grow that are also his children. So anyways, and when you say it like that, it's like the whole thing is like a whole trip. It's like too much to handle almost. It's like too much even for this gonzo science fiction author to try to wrap my head around and explain in a sentence. But while you're watching it, it's funny. Anyways, so they aspire to build their own, you know, Wendell and Wild aspire to make their own theme park, right? They don't want to just work for their dad, on their dad, inside their dad often. They want to have their own theme park. And that's kind of like a lot of the, you know, and so they're consume at one point they end up taking some of the cream, right? They end up eating some of the cream that they're using, and they find out, oh wow, it's kind of like, it's like demonic acid trip, you know, it tickles their tummy, and then they hallucinate, and they like it gets really groovy in the underworld all of a sudden, and then they actually kind of come out into the upper world, and for a moment, and they kind of anyway. So I won't give you the whole plot line. That's not the point of this stream video, but they're trying to so they get this idea that what if they could they discover the cream, right? This tick. They're finding ticks all over their father's head, and they're trying to help him clean the ticks off of his head. And they find out that, oh, if you put cream, this magical cream that makes hair grow, if you put it on the tick, the dead tick comes back to life. And then they kill this. They stomp the tick again. They squash the tick into a green, splatter, and then they put the cream back on the dead tick, and the tick magically comes back together, and comes back to life. And so they realize, oh, this hair cream is also a resurrection cream that can bring dead to life. And so they're like, and so they start to get this idea. Maybe they could make a ton of money charging people in the above ground, right, human world for resurrections, right? Bring dead people back to life and then charge them money, and they can make enough money that they can start their own theme park. So that's their idea, right? So it's a whole lot going on here. But so it's a it's a real trip. I mean, it's really even more off the wall than Nightmare Before Christmas, I would say, in a good way, And so they come up and they are trying to and there's a whole on the Earth, you have the main character of Wendell and Wild. So Wendell and Wild main character. Let's see. So the main character is this young girl who has had terrible things. I'm not gonna give you the whole story again, but she has had horrible things happen to her. Let's see here. Is this the one? Okay. I get all the characters. Why can I not remember the main character? Yeah, so here, let's get the IMDb that we can see. So basically two scheming demon brothers, Wendell and Wild, enlist the aid of 13-year-old Cat Elliott. That's it, Cat Elliott, to summon them to the land of the living. And there's a little bit of some of the video, right? So Cat has tragic things happen in her life when she's young. Her parents die. That's a lot like Beetlejuice. Another very similar show in the Tim Burton-esque. Well, it's not Tim Burton-esque. It literally is Tim Burton. Henry Selick was the creative force behind a lot of Nightmare Before Christmas and those shows. And so Cat Elliott is summoned up to the land of the living. Summons up the two demons to the land of the living. Or they get her to summon them up. Which is also like Beetlejuice. And so and anyway, so after Cat summons them up, then as their, I think, what is it called? The Hell Maiden. So she's the Hell Maiden that summons them up, not unlike Lydia, played by Winona Ryder in Beetlejuice. And when they come up, they begin their scheme to make a ton of money bringing back people from the dead. And anyway, so it's a long story. But, basically, Cat is in a town. And this is where, I'm going to get more into what I really wanted to talk about. So Cat is in a town. I mean, and number one of the things I really like about this show, I almost want to say this before I get deeper into this. It has like it has an all black and brown and non-white musical soundtrack. Most of the cast is not white, including the school headmaster, who is played by James Hong. I have entire streams just about. I actually have an entire stream mostly about him. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. He is the man who does the ice, the scientist in the cyberpunk tour de force Blade Runner, and he's one of the oldest actors in Hollywood. Actually, he's like 90 something, and he's also Chinese. And so, anyways. The cast is mostly all people of color, and the music is rock and alternative music and blues, and it's definitely alt music, right? It's like alt music, but it's black and brown music, right? So the soundtrack is not it's and sometimes like I put a spell on you. Like when we're talking, we here on the Silver Spook channel, you might remember we have like several alt goth PLC streams. In fact, I recently put this out. I didn't actually put this fully out. It's unlisted, but you can go watch this video now. It's a secret video that only you can watch. No, it's not secret, but it's just it was one of the panels that we put on. It was called Jordan Peele's Nope from a BIPOC Perspective. And there are some previous alt goth POC, which is, again, that's directly related because Jordan Peele is the executive producer of this Wendell and Wild. But I mean, we also had those alt goth POC panels where we specifically are talking, or we were talking about, let's see if I can find that one. Yeah, alt goth POC. Yeah, this one, yeah. So we had those alt goth POC panels here on the Silver Spook channel where we were specifically talking, with all of our friends, including Professor Flowers, another YouTube content creator, and Black and Asian person, and Jupiter Doomsday, Anis Adelan, and Rendis. We had our international all goth PLC panel. We're all dressing up for our spooky goth panel, and actually we talked about how a lot of black music, especially, but non-white music and culture is where a lot of the alt styles, including goth. I mean, I Put a Spell on You is a black musician's piece that was then covered, and white people got far more famous, right? Covering black music, and alternative styles are often thought of as white, as not black, and you can actually get accused if you dress and act in alt or goth or emo or punk or any of those subculture styles as a non-white person, right? And that's we all identify with that. You can be accused of by white people of being too white. You should be black who you are, or brown like your culture. Stop trying to be white culture. And by your own black and brown communities, like, why are you acting white for by putting on that green mohawk, or wearing that black goth clothing and that cat eye makeup? Why are you acting white? But the reality is actually, like, alt and goth styles, all that stuff is like hugely originated from black and non-white subcultures in places like the United States. So so Wendell and Wild, you can we have two of these panels. In fact, this is just one of multiple. And we've been doing several discussions about videos, and a lot of people are recurring members from the alt goth POC panels. But anyways, so Wendell and Wild in that sense is very much it's a movie that is very validating for all of us that are, like myself included, not white, black and brown, goth and alternative people that engage in such culture, wears the clothes, make the music. I spent much of my high school career making music, and in the like Smashing Pumpkins band. I listened to a lot of them, specifically the Nirvanas and all rock and all that kind of stuff. And I still make music to this day, including I made the Neofeud soundtrack, but also I make albums on the Silver Spook Bandcamp. That are all in the literally have full on anti-colonial Native Wine, which is a not white alternative metal albums that I just made in the last few months. So among other things, right? And also cyberpunk, which I would argue is a subgenre. Cyberpunk comes from punk, which is also an alternative, which is black and brown founded genre. And so cyberpunk itself is it also owes to non-white culture inside, is particularly the ones that are inside of Western countries, So I think that it's very validating to see. Um, it's very validating to see Wendell Wild just existing in the world, and all of the music and the main characters' clothing styles. They're the main character is like wearing all and goth clothing styles that are, and they're also like black styles as well. But it's not like the movie is really good in a certain in one sense. It's just that it's such a big movie. It's like the star. It's like the Finding Nemo. It's the Little Mermaid. It's the Frozen. It's the big animated movie of right now. At least to my mind, that's what it seems like it is. Maybe some racists are having problems with it because the West is full of white supremacy and they don't want to advertise it for whatever reason as much because they might offend white people. But to my mind, Wendell and Wild actually is like really good because it's normalizing that black and brown all and goth POC exists in the world, and that's like normal. It's not white culture. That's like one of the big things we were talking about in the all goth POC panel. Is like we don't want to be seen as frauds or acting white or betraying our people because we as people of color are making music or dressing or making art in an alternative style, right? You know what I'm saying? So, and not just because of the fact that we created all goth and punk styles and then white people ripped it off, but also because that's just ridiculous, and also because like culture shouldn't be gatekept in such a way. There's many reasons why, and also it's just annoying. And also it's incorrect. What's up, Big Teal? And so for all those reasons, speaking of our people of color, friends and families and fams, and so for all those reasons, that really it's very validating. So anyway, I don't know if you probably just saw it already, but yeah. So these are 5 all goth POCs that confirm what Wendell and Wild. We exist in the world. And so this is the real world counterpart to what Wendell and Wild is normalizing through the movie, right? I just wanted to say that we existed. I just want to say that like this Silver Spook is ahead of the curve because we made this video panel. We did these panels months before Wendell and Wild came out. So now you're all gonna be out there talking about, oh, I always knew that all goth POC were totally normal. I always knew there were punk and all those kind of styles. I'm sure all the white people are going to be saying, I knew that the whole time. And I'm going to be like, no, you didn't. Where's your video evidence? You don't have that. Yeah. But anyways, I just want to say that we hosted this back in the May and June and July. Anyways. So anyways, back to Wendell and Wild. Zombie democracy versus community. So, there's that. I could probably go off on an entire stream just on that, but and I've gone off on multiple just on that. That's what those panels are for. So go watch those panels when you have some time. I learned a lot myself from them, to be 100% honest. It's like I learned a lot about how not unique my experience was, because I actually thought, oh, I'm like the only black and brown goth in the world. I'm the only non-white goth in the world or something. I don't know. That's not true, obviously, but it feels like that, right? And then like talking to all these other people and like, no, we all have that experience. It's just that Western culture and society in America has not allowed us, encouraged us, or wanted us to be seen. That's the real trick, right? Because it's kind of like, because then like, well, I mean, any non-white people being seen as bad, because then you realize that America's not a democracy. It's racist as crap, and it's not better than China or Russia or any of those other places, because America is a garbage hellscape and a prison house of nations. Anyway, and I'm kind of jumping the gun on what I want to talk about. So, but specifically, they don't want black and brown goths to be seen, because then that also it kind of makes them it shows their guilty hand in their stealing of that culture. In the same reason they don't want you to discover, anything that Africa, Asia, Latin America, indigenous people ever accomplished and achieved, because then it makes their crushing of those indigenous peoples and the whole colonial capitalist history, it reveals all of their guilt and all of their crimes, right? And like, you destroyed all of these great things, and you stole all of these technologies and inventions, including musical genres and art, but not just that, technology, science, engineering, mathematics, astronomy, everything, you name it, it's all stolen. So they never want any non-white people ever to be seen. Ideally, everyone's white, and that's like that. There's like, even the Japanese game director was like, FF16, Final Fantasy, the Final Fantasy store was like, oh, everyone's white because it's Europe, or it's medieval or something like that. It's fantasy, and other people are like, well, that doesn't excuse it. I mean, and not just because there's black elves and brown dwarves in Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, but because that's just patently false. And anyway, but so they never want people of color to be seen, and so that's coming back to Wendell and Wild. That's a really important aspect to this movie, so I recommend everybody watch it on Netflix, like watch it on the streaming platforms, so that the data points go up. I mean, not that white supremacist capitalist dudes like Elon Musk are gonna stop trying to push Wendell and Wild and shows like that off of their platforms, right? By intentionally not Netflix, I believe, intentionally didn't advertise very much for Wendell and Wild, because Netflix is racist, basically. That's why. And white supremacy and capitalism, especially, and it's all Democrat run, so they don't want they don't really want they don't want any, because Wendell Wild is the story is like, it's more authentic than a lot. I always kind of judge when I see a movie if it has some people of color, even like a lot of them. But like, that's a lot of my streams, is like looking at things and going, is this a Kim's Convenience where it's white people writing Asian stories, or is this like Anthony Mackie says like him in Avengers, is this white people writing black characters and stories, like, and everything, mostly like what he's been in, or he said 98% of all the Hollywood production and shows he's ever been in are all 98% white. And mostly dudes, right? Is this an authentic story, or is this like Jordan Peele's Get Out, but in the real world, where white people are moving black people's mouths and telling someone else's story? But Wendell Wild is like, it's not like as raw as some of the Jordan Peele stuff, like Get Out or Us. We recently watched Nope. But I think that Wendell and Wild is it's more authentic than some other things, and so I think that's one reason why they don't want more of these shows to be made. And it does have huge amounts of non-white people. It's like, it's massively not white, and so that's that's troubling for the racist United States, Europe, Canada, and all those white countries. And so they're having some dilemmas with that. But anyways, so Wendell and Wild though. But let's get into more of the stuff I really wanted to talk about. Not that I didn't want to talk about that. I want to talk about all that stuff. So inside of Wendell and Wild, you have the main character who is going through, like kind of like really difficult trauma from the start of this thing. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah. So the main character, played by a cat, the main character with the boombox, right, which is really cool. I mean, everything about this production is like really cool and awesome. Like, I love the design of the boombox with like a giant eyeball. It's like a spooky 80s boombox. It's freaking it's pretty awesome. Cat is going through, trying to survive the trauma of parents dying early on. It has guilt about that because she feels like she's responsible, because she kind of screams at one point. Even though it's like, basically, demons from the underworld temporarily pass through the dimensional membrane and come out as worms in an apple that Cat, the little girl, is eating. She screams at them, and that causes a car crash. It's like the beginning of Beetlejuice, very similar. The beginning of Beetlejuice, where a dog comes out, and then mommy and daddy, driving the husband and wife. I'm not mommy and daddy. His husband and wife drive off, like trying to avoid a dog, drive off of a bridge. So it's a bridge. It's actually the same story as Beetlejuice. Alec Baldwin and his partner drive off of a bridge because of a random accident, right? And in that case, it's a dog that kind of, causes them to drive off of this bridge. They go through this side of this wooden wall, and then they end up in the water and they die early on in the movie. So that I feel like that's a direct callback to Beetlejuice. And so in Wendell and Wild, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get that one. Yeah, so so the parents die early on, and that causes this no, it's different from Beetlejuice. The main character is not necessarily, it's not really about the surviving that trauma. It's the parents in the Alec Baldwin, the two main characters become ghosts throughout the rest of that movie, right? And those two ghosts are trying to they have their own mission. So Wendell and Wild are kind of like the parents in a little bit in certain sense, but they're demons. They're supernatural, non-human, non-corporeal entities in that sense. But it has a lot of differences there. But anyways, and so part of Cat's surviving is kind of becoming kind of spooky and dealing with the that struggles, internal struggles, is to kind of like push away other people and be very kind of scary and and so the style kind of reflects her style reflects her approach to the rest of the world, and also kind of like what's happening inside, the kind of demons inside of herself, and also like blaming herself for things, and see like I can't get close to anybody. So when she starts at her new school, she's very like she comes in with the boombox. She's kind of weird and kind of scares everybody. Let me see if I can get to the school scene. So she comes to the school. It's a Catholic school. I tell you what, that's some Catholic school trauma for me just watching that. No, it's simultaneously being seen, and also, oh my God, I remember going to Catholic school. No, so we can get it. Yeah, there you go. So she's like walking through the highway. There's all these nuns, really creepy freaking nuns, man. They kind of look like evil penguins, and I both mean literal penguins and the penguin from another Tim Burton show, Batman, the second Batman, and she's kind of scaring all of the classmates, and it kind of she was like intentionally kind of like push everybody away and make herself out to be like this monstrous thorny bush that will stab you if you get too close, because she's like, people who get too close to me die, so I can't have any friends because like my parents died and I killed them, so you have to stay away from me. So she's kind of like doing that, but she's kind of doing that from like a place of trying to protect other people. And so that's kind of her deal. And inside of the town, I'm not gonna have time to go through the whole fucking plot, but inside of the town there is a lot of there's ongoing like kind of struggles in the town. That's really what I wanted to get to, such as it was formerly a place that had a brewery, or like they were making stuff. They had a was it a beer brewery? I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Wendell and Wild. Let me just double check that. Yeah, so the Rust Bank Brewery, that's what it is. Delroy is the owner of Rust Bank Brewery. Klaxon Corporation. So Rust Bank Brewery is the town's former major business, right? That was like kind of what they did. They had a brewery there in the industrial. They had an industrial, major brewing operation. And then you have Klaxon Corporation is they're a corporation. They're one of the nasty evil corporations, in the future. Corporations rule the world. I mean, that's not the future. That's the entire history of the West. So that's the capitalist colonialist reality forever. That's not really the future. But anyways, so Klaxon Corporation is trying to let's see if I get the exact details. Yeah, so Klaxon during the ongoing opens of we learned that Cat's father Delroy is the owner of Rustbank Brewery, while Wilma is the owner of the local library. And someone who was later revealed to be the Klaxon Corporation is trying to get him to sell the brewery because they want to build prisons there. Delroy denies the offer because it's evident. So that's the main character's parent, right? Because it's evident that his brewery is the center of many other local businesses and a source of employment. While returning home, though, the weather deteriorates, causing Wilma to worry about their safety. Delroy assures them that everything is going to be all right, and that's when Kat notices a dual-headed bug in the candy apple and cries out, thereby causing Delroy to swerve off the road into the river. Wilma manages to get Kat out of the car, but she and Kat's dad die, right? But it's shortly after, like the big thing is what I wanted to get at is that in Wendell and Wild, it centers around, in the human world, the parents of Kat that are trying to, who are also not white, obviously, trying to keep the local businesses and economy and the community, right, in that sense, right? If you think of community as like the people, right, the businesses, the government, I mean, it's really everything, you know, and that's a wider point that expands beyond the scope of Wendell and Wild in a lot of senses that I wanted to kind of get to. And so the people and the businesses, including Rustbank, right? And it's kind of like, you know, you think about it as the brewery is like, it's not everything. It's just one thing people do. And around the brewery, you have the restaurants, right? And then you have the local, you know, theater. You have the other shops. You have entertainment. You know, like theme parks, right? You have, or whatever. You have the soccer field. You have the school. You have the library, right? You have places of education. You have places of learning. You have the government that has the places where they make the cement, that paves the roads, right? And then they have the hospital that cares for people. So all of that community, right, comes out of, and it's not like if there is no brewery, then everything else doesn't exist. But the brewery is an important engine that helps the rest, is an economic engine that helps the rest of the people in their totality of society, civilization, government, business, recreation, right? Religious, spiritual, every sphere of life comes together, right? It happens, and it's not necessarily gone because Rustbank is gone, but like the existence of that, and certainly under a capitalist global structure, that is the major output that of products and services, specifically the beer, right? That's being produced. It's a major engine that they can sell to other places that helps to get revenue so that they can help run other parts of their community, right? Now they can find some other replacement for it, but like that I think that's actually very important to, like, it is important to Wendell Wild, but it's certainly important to what I wanted to talk about, right? Which is the differences between, as I call it, zombie democracy, or zombie, you could call it pretend communities with pretend democracies that are actually colonial, authoritarian regimes of mass suffering and mass exploitation for the benefit of a small minority of the board, let's say, or the aristocracy, or the oligarchy, or the 1%, or the slave masters, right? Or the employers, right? And I'm talking about the capitalist employers. So, right? Because after, and you kind of later on, now, you know, it's not, I might be incorrect on this, but I'm pretty sure it's not like, I don't believe that Klaxon Corporation, right, intentionally kills, right, the parents, but they do benefit from the fact that the runner of the local brewery and the library have died, right? And they use that as a point to jump in and start to push to build prisons inside of the community, right? Inside of Rust Bank. Rust Bank is kind of a stand-in for all of the collapsed, deindustrialized, or economically distraught and devastated parts of places like the United States, right? Talking about Michigan, the Rust Belt, right? The falling apart parts of Pennsylvania and New York and the East Coast and basically everywhere really. Detroit certainly, and a lot of those places have disproportionate. They're urban and they have disproportionate amounts of people of color living in them, right? And they're places that they things are not doing very well, and the solution has been right to build prisons, right? And that's what the current president and Kamala Harris both made their careers with the crime bill and the Biden specifically under the crime bill and under his policies of quadrupling the prison population, mostly with black and brown people and poor people, obviously, is to fill all of the prisons of deindustrialized America with Reaganomics, economically even more divided America, and just take all the poor and black and brown people especially and dump them in prisons, and then have them do prison labor for vastly bigger profits under vastly more exploitation, right? And so this is like a story that is Wendell Wild is a story of the United States. It's a very American story. Not just the United States, but especially U.S. as the world's biggest prison population of 2.5 million disproportionately non-white prisoners under legalized slavery. Is what it is. It is the American story. So anyway, so that's Klaxon, and so when and another part of Wendell Wild is you have the board, and that's where I want to get to the zombie democracy part. So content warning if you don't like zombies, but they're not really zombies. They're just like resurrected dead old colonizers with literal freaking British officer hats and shit. And that part cracks me up. So the board, the old guard, right? Is it called the old guard? The old guard board, right? So if I can get a picture of those guys. You also have the head of the head priest is also gets resurrected first, and he kind of concocts his plot to get the board resurrected to help Wendell and Wild, because Wendell Wild is like, nobody around here has any money, but if you could, the priest tells Wendell and Wild. The priest played by James Song, and he's the head of the school, and his school is going under. If you can resurrect the board, they have all the money, and they'll give you money. They can give you all the money you want. Klaxon Corporation has tons of money, and if you resurrect the board for them, then they'll give you tons of money. So it's very much like sell out to the rich people, and then you'll get what you want, right? That's kind of like one of the themes happening. Where is the freaking board? Board, zombies. I'm gonna find those guys. Yeah, here you go. So, demons. So these are the old guard board, right? And so in Wendell and Wild, you have kind of the current board is led by a Hispanic woman who is like investigating Klaxon Corporation and digging up all this dirt. Like, for example, they have been scheming and plotting and lying, cheating, stealing, basically, to force through these prisons to be built in the deteriorating community of Rust Bank, right? They want their private prisons to be built, and they make tons of money from their private prisons, and so there's all the plotting and scheming. The old board are all like they're like Mr. Potato Head undead liches, which is what they are. It's like Joe Biden. They all kind of look like Joe Biden. I think they might be in slightly better shape than Joe Biden. These guys only look like they've been dead for like 1 century, whereas Joe Biden is he's some kind of like mummified corpse of racist colonial capitalism. And so these people are looking pretty good compared to Sleepy Joe, compared to undead military industrial war criminal Joe, compared to racist slave plantation Joe Biden. And so these people. So these guys are, they're brought back to life by Wendell and Wild using their magical cream. So if I can get a picture, now is the time of the stream where Silver Spook plays 52 pickup with all of his 52 tabs that he has opened, and sees if he can whack-a-mole some of them and figure out where he put Wendell and Key and Peele's Wendell and Wild. There it is. I found it. Look at how good I am at my own video game that I just made up. Anyways, so Wendell and Wild are looking at their tick and finding out that they can resurrect ticks, as I said earlier, and so they bring the board back, right? They bring the board back of the old rich white dudes. Some of them are generals of the U.S. military turned presidents. Some of them are queens and kings of England, and overseers of India. Some of them just went on safari and killed a bunch of black people and giant tigers and lions, and then came back and were billionaires. Some of them are Elon Musk's great granddaddy, I'm sure. I guarantee that. They who are even as incompetent clown as him, and got their British, companies folded, just like Elon is destroying himself on Twitter and losing money hand over fist, but it's okay because his empire that backs him just gives him infinite more amounts of money. Anyways, so that's who the board represent. It's like it's a very if you're reading it very closely, you look at them behind the pictures of them, right? Playing cricket with their Monopoly Man top hat. It's like the guy is third from the left was literally the big bankster villain in Wizard of Oz. He was hanging out with flappers and rolling in piles of cocaine and giant stacks of $100 bills, before he actually went through the Pecora commissions in the 1930s, but which the U.S. hasn't had, so because the U.S. and capitalism is gonna die for real this time. Anyways, so that's who the board are, and the board are brought back to life again to try to outvote the local communities, right? Coming back to that kind of a concept of a functioning, healthy community, community that has actual democracy, or the input and the interests of the masses of the people, right? By, for, and of the people is what they say in the West. There's never been democracy ever in the U.S. or any Western country, not even close. And there's no perfect democracy, but there's not even anything close to democracy ever. Not going all the way back to Greece and Rome. It's a joke. I was just watching a video made by the Australian and New Zealand government about what democracy is for kids, and it's laughable. It's always some white statue of some Plato or some Sophocles, and democracy comes from that. Those assholes had mostly, and then it's like reading a Washington Post article about China. You know what I'm saying? We have the greatest democracy in the world, children, second graders in America and third graders in the UK and New Zealand and Australia. Greece and Rome had the great. Oh, and by the way, the majority of the population were slaves, women, or not rich white dudes, basically, and they didn't vote. Oh, and Rome also had democracy. Oh, that's right. But then everyone except the richest, most powerful senators and all of Nero's friends, everyone who wasn't Nero's friends, everyone who wasn't Elon Musk, it's literally are you Elon Musk's friend? Then you don't get a vote. But that's how it is today. Because not what you the masses say still doesn't matter. But they started right. But like a BBC article about China, about Russia, or the Financial Times article about China, it starts with, it's an authoritarian shithole, but nobody reads past the headline. But that's how history books, that's how everything is in the West. The history books, everything, right? We have the greatest democracy ever. Oh, except we didn't have any democracy in Greece or Rome. And then we had this feudal time. That wasn't too good. But now it's not feudal anymore. And then America and Britain had the greatest democracy ever. Oh, except almost white cislanded slave owners are the only people that could vote. Oh, yeah. Oh, but now we're all fixed because it's 2022. Oh, except 99% of now you can vote, but 99% of all policy isn't determined by which flavor of plutocrat you vote for. It's actually determined by, again, the richest, whitest dudes. It's the same fucking board. It's always been the board. white, cis, landed, aristocratic, oligarchic, Caesars, feudal kings, British colonizers, American capitalist dickheads, slave master. They're all the same. They're all fucking slave masters. There has never been democracy ever. There's just like really big fonted headlines about Greece, Rome, Britain, America, and Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and the G7. There's never been democracy, But if you thinking in your head, because you think in Western brain, which is only read the first 5 words of anything and then forget everything else, right? You think that there's democracy, but that's the mind trick, is that anyone thinks there's democracy anywhere in any white country, period, ever, ever, ever. Never has it existed. Never. There's been little fun coloring book games called elections that don't make any impact, and they never have. They never have. So, and so that's why I really like the board, as a kind of a visual representation of the entire Euro world and the Euro dominated world, including Japan, as they go along with this capitalist colonial structures. This is what has always, this is Greece. These are all the white toga party dudes abusing their wives and like being carried around by their slaves, sipping their fucking, Olympus tea. These are the senators of Rome, right? The senators, right? That's where Senate comes from. It's from Roman non-democratic oligarchy with a bunch of board members, right? The board members hang around and they do thumbs up or thumbs down for Russell Crowe, right? In The Gladiator. That's the democracy. It's a bunch of board members choosing how many Christians to feed to a lion today. Or how many slaves, how many more countries they're going to imperialize and cause colonial damage in what used to be indigenous Britain, but now it's just a future colonizer that they've ruined, right? Or Gaul, that's now France, that's going to go and destroy Africa and Haiti and charge Senegalese for speaking French in 2020. So there has never been anything in every Western country. There's never been anything close to democracy. If democracy is a bunch of white guys sitting around, rich white guys sitting around in the boardroom, right, of their Greek fancy little stone marble boardroom, right, with slaves, or their Roman gladiator decision, boardroom, eating the rest of the world's lunches that they've all been conquering with their legions, or the British boardroom where they're sitting around sipping tea, deciding how to carve up Africa, and then going to Berlin with all their other Euro board members, always white guys showing up in a fucking boardroom to carve up Africa, Asia, and Latin America, or in the United States with their monopoly hat sitting in their boardroom deciding how much we're not going to spend on your healthcare, your housing, and your food, and how is it 60 or 70 billion we're going to give to Ukraine this month instead of taking care of the people that there's ostensibly in a democracy in the United States are supposed to be taken care of, right? There has never been democracy anywhere in the West. The indigenous people have had democracies. There have been like a varying degrees of quality, right? But like to get to even the baseline democracy, you have to have the masses of the people, all of the community, meaning all the people, not just like a handful of people, all the people making decisions about their destiny. I was just teaching our kids about what is politics and what that even means. Silver Spook Hui, we have the Silver Spook Cooperative. There's no education in the U.S., so I can't send my kids to a brain poisoning facility called a public, private, or charter school. So I have to teach my kids like this week about what is an election. What does that mean? What does democracy mean? So our kids know having a vote, being able to fill out a ballot, right, at a voting booth at a public school, or mailing it in with your mail-in absentee ballots. Voting does not give you democracy. It does not actually mean that you have a healthy, a valid, non-authoritarian, non-oppressive community. The United States has voting, and we learned the multiple ways in which you could have an election, have voting, and it not be a democracy. And so it's very important that they understand it, because people with PhDs in the United States, 99% of America don't even fucking know what a democracy is. They don't even fucking know what their own country has. And they certainly don't know that China is more democratic than them. They don't know that. That's for damn sure. And so, but that's why I really like this visualization. I'm like, obviously, no, this is where cyberspook. This is not the point of Wendell and Wild. I'm discussing what I really want to discuss using Wendell and Wild and using the pop cultural phenomenon as a jumping off point. But it's very useful because, and I'm trying to make it pertinent to this moment. It is November 5th, the day that the supposed U.S. democracy, the supposed freedom, human rights, and equality having free country of the United States, that is the most enslaving country in the world, internally and externally, in every metric. It has far more prisoners per capita than China, that it says is authoritarian, or Russia, which it says is authoritarian. And the United States has this thing it calls an election now. But everything that the U.S. does, the time it spends getting you to give Stacey Abrams money when Nancy Pelosi comes on and says, "Oh, we gotta beat those Democrats," all of that stuff is democracy theater that makes you think that you live in a place with a democracy where your vote matters, where your voice matters, where the people run things, not the rich and the wealthy and the feudal / colonial / capitalist / white supremacist rulers. But that it's all this is all very expensive lies, And when you fill that ballot out, nothing is going to change materially in your life. It doesn't fucking really matter. I mean, there's very slight, minuscule changes that could happen. But and so one of those would be like abortion, versus you have the mask on and the mask off racist parties. The Republicans mask. We don't pretend we're racist, capitalist shitheads, and then you have the Democrats that we pretend that we're not racist, and we're definitely capitalist though. But we will pretend like we care about you economically, but neither party gives a shit about you. And maybe abortion, but even there, it's like the Democrats. The probability that you might have some women's rights and some keep abortion and maybe gay marriage won't be unraveled. It's like might be a little bit. It's higher maybe under the Republicans, but the Democrats haven't codified Roe v. Wade. They haven't done shit that they said they were going to do. So it's really unclear. When it comes to military, when it comes to war, when it comes to economics, when it comes to all your basic needs and all those central, very important things, nobody is going to do anything for you. There's no democracy in the United States, period. And there's none in Britain, and there's none in Germany, and there's none in Sweden and Finland and France. And by the way, Germany and all those European countries have sometimes even more racist policies and realities than the United States, because they have gone unchecked since their Nazi parties took control after World War II, and then they just airbrushed all the Nazi-ness out of them. And so there's no democracy in any of those places, because if you have racial inequalities that are not addressed, you don't have democracy. If you have sexist inequalities that are not addressed, then you don't have democracy. If you have imperialist policies against other countries, you can have a very nice country inside, and that's how Sweden is. It's pretty nice if you're white in Sweden. Although now they're going full Nazi, so I guess women's going to go back under the bus. So is Finland. But if you are outside of Sweden, like if you're in Afghanistan being killed by Swedish military personnel, then you don't have democracy. You can have and that's another level is your country has to not just be democratic inside. The way it relates to other countries has to be democratic. Every European country and all the Euro settler colonies like the United States, every single one of them have never been democratic in a country to country basis. They've always been colonial oppressors and enslavers. And so in that sense alone, just even if the U.S. was better inside, it would still not be democratic if it continued to bomb Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and have 800 military bases in almost every country on the planet. It would not be democratic because the United States is illegally occupying Hawaii. Even if the U.S. had 100 parties that were all, you had universal health care, Medicare for all, and everyone in America had the level of approval rating of their government that China has, which is 96 to 98% by Western Ash Institute and Harvard surveys. By the way, it's not the Chinese surveying their own economy, their own democracy. It's the U.S. surveying their democracy that at their most prestigious institutions that determines China has 90 plus percentage approval of their government. The United States has less than 50% for every branch of government, and it's like 20% for Congress. It's like it's abysmal. On that alone, the United States, even the U.S. elite Ivy League institutions admit there is no democracy in the United States. Now, behind closed doors, they admit it. They're a plutocracy. They know this. The masses of the population, they're so good at maintaining plutocracy, they'll even say it out loud. Well, we don't have a democracy in the U.S. You have people like, you have like, Cornel West, and you'll have like, even some of the economics and political professors at Harvard will be saying there's no democracy in the United States. But the masses of the population are so well brainwashed. They'll oh, but I voted. It's so great in America. We should go blow up Russia and China. So, anyways, I'm a little bit off the top, a little bit off the topic, but but that's kind of what I wanted to talk about because it is election day, right? Jumping out from Wendell and Wild, the show, and so the zombie democracy. So in one sense, Wendell and Wild has within it a zombie democracy, in the sense that, right? It has a zombie democracy in the sense that all those dudes on the board, right? The board is made up of undead people voting, right? That's one way you could think of it. Another way you could think of a zombie democracy is a sense that, and they're all horrible, nasty, putrid eyesores, and pure, horrible, nasty, putrid, sore-covered, pus-filled, disgusting things, kind of like Joe Biden or the entire Democratic Party or Republican Party or all parties in the West, in the U.S., that are made up of zombies that have no capacity for independent thought, right? They just follow, Lockheed Martin. Instead of brains, all they do is, give me money. They're just like, lobbyist. They just, and that's all they do. They don't have any independent ideas. They just do whatever they're told. They're led along by their reptilian brainstem, the only thing that left of their mind. Like Nancy Pelosi, just like, oh, we're all capitalists now. Who's gonna give me money? Are you gonna give me money, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman? It's a zombie democracy. It's run by literal zombies that vote whether to raise the military budget 800 to 850 billion or 840 billion. There is no like independent thought, There's no rational thought. There's almost no thought. It's just like the U.S. Senate representatives, the president himself, the Supreme Court, every branch of the government, they're all exist as they're like life support systems with like blood vessels, pumping hearts, and warm blood, ostensibly. Like it's like they have a pulse, right? So maybe they're slightly. It's like that's basically the point of the board, right? They just have to have a pulse to go in and do a vote, to do whatever the richest people want, right? And they're like, there's a Congress. They're a life support system for a pen signing hand that says, okay, let's give another $1 trillion to Ukraine to fund Nazis to kill needless people and possibly start nuclear war. That's the only, so that a handful of rich war profiteers can make some money. That's all the government of the United States exists for. There's nothing. It's a zombie democracy made up of zombies, funded by zombies, run by mindless clowns, by a population of zombies that don't even fucking realize that they don't even know what they live in, that they don't live in a democracy, right? And in many ways, it's a zombie democracy. In that it's not even. I was gonna say the U.S. is a zombie democracy in that in the way that sometimes they'll refer to zombie corporations and zombie banks. Zombie corporation or a zombie bank, right? In the 2008-09 financial crisis, like a Lehman Brothers, like a Bear Stearns, was a bank that was so its returns, its profits were vastly beneath its its growing interest. It's total debts and interest. Its revenue couldn't even pay for interest on its debt. Basically, like it's a dead in the water bank or corporation, right? So it's a zombie corporation or bank. It's gonna die sooner or later. You might as well get rid of it now rather than later and let it get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger to fail. But that, but when you say that about the United States, that suggests that, the United States ever had a living democracy. But as I already said, right, the United States, its predecessor, Britain, France, Spain, Germany, Sweden, all the way back into Greece and Rome 2,000 years ago, none of them have ever had democracies, right? So it's not really fair to call the U.S. a zombie democracy because that suggests there was one point where the U.S. was a living, thriving democracy. No, the U.S. began dead. It was dead on Mayflower, and Columbus and Jamestown arrival. It was dead on arrival. It was always dead. It was dead. It was dead before. Britain was dead before it set sail. Britain was always fucking dead. It's an undead lich, demon spawning, cesspool. There's never been anything alive there, and what they have is very good makeup. That's another thing I like about this scene, because what Wendell and Wild do, see if I get a picture of that. What Wendell and Wild do for the board, right? Is they give them a makeover, right? So Wendell and Wild, they bring all the board back, and there's an entire scene where what they do is they make all this undead fucking gross piles of rotten flesh, right? They bring the board back, and they I'm just gonna put something else so you have to look at those dead bodies, and they try to make all those rotten piles of flesh look like living, breathing, functioning people, right? So they put glasses on, they put like a pound of foundation and eyeliner and makeup to make them not look like they're dead fucking bodies. But that's like the United States, right? That's like history books, right? In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue and discovered America, and with Terra Nullius, we cleared the land of all the savages and unwanted peoples, and all of that is makeup on the dead corpse of America that's always been dead on arrival, that never had any freedom, democracy, liberty, equality, justice ever, right? It's a bunch of white dudes in their fucking slave plantations, like Thomas Jefferson, like George Washington, like all of these fucking people that are celebrated every year, every Thanksgiving. We're getting ready to vomit up all of my dry, boiled, seasonless turkey breast, which is the disgusting food that people cook for Thanksgiving in white culture. Listening to people talk about Thomas Jefferson and their founding fucking fathers, right? I'm getting ready to throw up everything that I'm feeling sick to my stomach. All of that is all of that is the makeup, right? The Thanksgiving, the history, all your history books. So I can't in good conscience send my native Hawaiian indigenous children to any of your public, private, or charter schools, because your schools are going to poison my children's brains. Also, they don't teach Hawaiian history or Hawaiian culture, and they're gonna tell them shit like we were saved, right? Like I talked about this last week, so I won't go off too far on that one. But so history in the United States. I put it in quotes. There's no history in the United States. There's only mass lying. History is the makeup on the dead corpse that has always been dead of the U.S. and its predecessors like Britain and France, etc. It makes it seem like there has ever been anything functional there. It's like it's propping up a dead body, right? It's like taking the 260 slave-owning child rapist clown that was more incompetent than Elon, probably. His name was Thomas Jefferson, right? And that's everything that he was. And then putting a bunch of makeup on him by putting him on your bills and having these history books where he was a great man and a great philosopher, and look at how prestigious he looks. Look at him in this beautiful painting, and all 330 million. Think about it this way. All 330 million children are being mentally abused. They're being gaslit to believe that child rapist, slave-owning, plutocratic shithead, Thomas Jefferson, is some kind of great man. He stole his ideas from indigenous people, and the British stole countless ideas from Asia, including look at the great American checks and balances system that was stolen from China. Actually, they already had a system that separated the different branches of the government to minimize the possibility of centralized corruption. Everything that the United States and Britain and all the colonizer world has ever had is stolen. It's a bunch of unwashed ass, cobbled together, eldritch, disgusting, mediocre white guys. Like Roman Greece, their predecessors. That they look at the beautiful Greco-Roman columns, just like our founding ancestors, the Greeks and the Romans who invented democracy. Those fuckers were all undead liches too. That have been polished up with whitewashed, literally physically and whitened marble for white supremacy. They were all eldritch, gross zombies. All the Greeks and all the Romans, all of them they're all fucking hung. Anybody who had the actual thought to implement functional democracy, like maybe a Socrates had a couple thoughts one time and they just killed him. All of your predecessors have been terrible, zombie, useless, horrible people who have been propped up. And I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings. I don't care. So because I mean, you know, if we're not going to move past that until people can get that fucking lesson, you know what I'm saying? There is nothing worth celebrating about the U.S. so-called democracy, and that's why I love this scene, because it's like it's not. I'm obviously, like, I don't know if that's what the producers intended, but that's what I'm reading that in there, you know, whether they like it or not. I'm reading that in because it's what I'm doing today. You know, it's kind of like, oh, it hurts my feelings, Silver Spook, but you know what hurts more than your feelings? How about actual genocide of my entire people? So, like, after you've gone through genocide and you have to work an entire part-time job just to make sure your children know some Hawaiian language and your own culture and history, and to stop your own water and land from being poisoned and stolen from you. After you've gone through genocide, tell me about how your feelings were hurt when I told you true shit about your racist ass country. But until you're a white person, but I don't know how you're going to go through genocide being a fucking white person, though. I don't really know how you're going to do that. So maybe just shut the fuck up. Anyways, anyways, I'm gonna take a short break, short second break to just say I'm gonna get more into more specifics and the details. Oh, quick, but I just want to shout out to this thread that I made. Speaking of that, because you know Holly and I do have to do a lot of work, you know, and I know I kind of went over this. I'm not gonna go through the whole thread, but I just want to. You know, my partner and I have to come up with our own entire Hawaiian language curriculum because the U.S. erases our Hawaiian history, which takes a lot of time. It's like many hours a week. And I estimate it's like, you know, it's an entire 20 hours a week. We have to take our own unpaid time. So we really could use your support to keep doing both these streams and education, and also just educating our own kids. Because let me say that again, we cannot send our children to school because Native Hawaiian children, almost every school in Hawaii has lead and jet fuel in it. Not only because of that, but also because to this day, the children in Hawaii are punished for speaking Hawaiian. And so our kids speak Hawaiian, you know, our kids know Hawaiian language. And to this very day, children like this are punished for speaking Hawaiian in Hawaii. This is another way U.S. isn't democratic. Certainly not with indigenous peoples. And so we have to home educate. Even if you know, we're happy to do it and we want to do it, but even if like, you know, it was a lot harder for us, or, you know, we have a moral obligation to home educate our kids, because there is no school in Hawaii there's a handful, like, but they're like very difficult to get into. There is no public school, and almost every single private and charter school. There is no place that we can send our kids that we will not be in terror of having the Hawaiian beaten out of our children. Because this is happening not last decades or century. In 2022, children are still punished for speaking Hawaiian. And until the teacher and the principal and everyone is removed and this doesn't happen anymore, I'm going to keep putting this image up there. Because to this very second, The teacher, the principal, the school, the superintendent, the state, the county, the city, no one has been punished. Nothing has happened. Children are punished for speaking Hawaiian in school at recess. Not even like interrupting, just like speaking Hawaiian in school. Children are punished for speaking Hawaiian to this second anywhere in the school. And nothing has happened. So you and people need to fucking pay us to do this education because nobody else is going to do it. Not just because we're doing this streaming for you and it's content that, does it worth something to you? Can you support us on Patreon so we can keep doing it? So we can, literally, otherwise I don't have a trust. I don't have rich parents. I don't have grants. I don't have a fancy job at a university. I don't have any of that shit. So if you want this to keep happening, if you want the Silver Spook Hui to exist, we need that money because it's fucking a lot of work. And we're not making a ton of money from the games and the other stuff. So, especially if you're a white person, pay us to, it's like, do you care? If you care about workers, do you care about indigenous people, or do you just want to sit around and consume my life as content? You just get off on listening to me talk about how much you've hurt us. Is that what you do? You just take black and brown people's life and then you just eat it up and then you move on? Like it's a fucking Netflix, box or something. What Megan says something yesterday. It's like white people show up to people of color's things and they look at it and it's like, oh, that's a nice window pane, and they just move on. So anyway, that's my you fucking tip. Don't skip the tip. Anyways, obviously we have lots of supporters here already, but especially if you are a white person, don't skip that motherfucking tip. Okay, Wendell and Wild, zombie democracies and actual communities. So anyways, back to this. Actually, one more thing is other than making sure that I'm not saying that just to be mean. I'm saying that because we're not going to be able to do this stuff. If we still live under your capitalism, colonizer. Because we're living under that, we can't keep doing this education if we don't have the resources to keep the electricity and the lights on and the time to do that. Otherwise, I got to go do other stuff, and then more languages go extinct. And then more children don't get the education. And then more people don't hear any more Silver Spook streams. Or nobody gets to have any more Silver Spook anything. No more Silver Spook panels. So do you care about it? Or you just tune in and you're just like, and then you're not listening actually. Okay, anyways, because some people assume, I remember I was talking to Holly, like, a lot of people assume that because it's on the internet, because I have a camera, I'm not super, because it looks like it's very, I'm not going to say that what I'm doing is super professionally made, because it is being consumed by you. You assume that there is a corporation or a big university or some kind of government backed grant or something financing this. Nothing is financing what I'm doing except you. That's the point. That's part of the point. That's how we can keep doing it. Because if I did have some kind of, I wouldn't be saying the things that I'm saying if I had some big money corporation behind me. I would just be saying, come to Hawaii. We have great beaches. I love Hawaii. By the way, stop at Dole Pineapple and get yourself a can of our beautiful juice. That's what I would be saying. Come to Hawaii. No, really, fly in. Give us all COVID and take the remains of our dwindling water supply. That's what I would be saying. So anyways, after guilt tripping everybody into giving us money so we can keep doing this, okay, so yesterday, I want to shout this out real quick. Happy 4th of Native American Heritage Month to this is Miranda and all the indigenous friends. So this was a panel that we did yesterday at the actually I have another picture of that. It was at the Games Festival. Where is it? I know I shared it on. God damn it. Okay, I forgot where I shared it. Okay, it was part of the Games Festival. Ah, crap. Okay, I know. I shared a picture. I'm just gonna go through. Was great to see. Yeah, this was. Yeah. So as part of the um, games in action, uh, conference at the University of British Columbia, in Vancouver, Canada, and it was an event that was put on. You can see me. I'm on this. So this is a big event, right? So it's a big event that was happening in person and some of it virtual. And so myself and my friends Megan Byrne of Achimo Games, Santo of the Santo Avero Ojeda of the what's it called? Shoot, can't remember the name of the company. Another indigenous game developer from South America, or from is Guarani, from Paraguay, I believe. And Miranda is Pawnee and Cherokee in Oklahoma. Works for Unity, in fact. And then there's me. So anyways, I just want to say shout out to all of our this panel, and it was really good. Thanks again to Dr. Chris Patterson, Chris Pye, for getting us all down there for the Indigenous Futures in Games panel. John Romero was also at this event as well. He gave the keynote there. Thanks to Dr. Chris Pye, or Kavika Guillermo, who invited me, and I invited all of our friends to try to put that together. So yeah. Anyways, all the commercials aside, it's now 12:10. Let me get this motherfucker done. So yeah, back to Wendell and Wild though. So anyways, so the main thing I kind of want to kind of get to is the what is democracy? Because I was like teaching that this week to our kids, and we're talking about like how just because you have votes, right? Just because you have votes in a place, right? That doesn't mean that you have a democracy. And a couple of ways, and this is a quiz that I talked to my daughter and son, and they both get it. They get this. They already know more than the vast majority of people in the U.S. of any educational level. Voting does not mean that you have democracy if the results of that votes are undone by military force, right? With a military coup, as example, right? If all politicians' options that you can vote for, right, are paid puppets of a plutocracy. So, I mean, for example, I mean, full disclosure, I did vote, but I don't pretend like my votes are gonna make a huge difference under the plutocracy. Like it's gonna really move, because the options that I had were, basically, it was all Democrats that are all in Hawaii. It's one of the most option-free places in the United States. It actually, I would argue, the most. It has the most. It's like 25 times more money. It's the most weighted to one party of any state of the United States, the Democratic Party in Hawaii. And the options, all the options are not going to move the needle on any of the actual things that matter. They're all, every single politician that got into office took millions upon millions and millions of dollars or more from the wealthy that moves, that causes it. So I was talking to my daughter, like, that really rich guy in the game that Daddy made, right? Pigeon with Gun, right? His name is Gunnar Richmond, right? And Gunnar Richmond, he has a line in it where he's like, the protagonist is like, you kidnapped the president, you mean, nasty rich dude. He's kind of like the board member. He's the guy. He has a giant robot that he has stacks of money as tall as skyscrapers. He has skyscrapers made out of guns, and he has guns that shoot money called mega banks. He literally has a giant gun that shoots huge wads of money. He shoots like $100 million at a time out of his gun. It's a cartoon, it's a very gonzo cartoon slapstick video game. But there was a point to that, which is that, like, and he says at one point, the protagonist says, "You kidnapped the president, you mean nasty rich dude," and then he's like, "Ha ha ha, rich dudes like me don't need to kidnap presidents. We own your sham government," right? And so, but that's what it's like in the United States and every Western country, which is that Western liberal democracies are not. All the people that get into office again are put there with the amount of money it takes to raise money, to get the campaign finance, to pay for all of the registrations, to pay for the advertising, to pay for all of the teams of people that have to come around to help you get elected and go into office, right? Just even to get into the door, it's like $500 to get into the door at the Hawaii Democratic Party if one event, $500 per person. You're literally gate kept with, you know, 3, 4, 5 digit sometimes literal gates. The money is the gate to even get in the door, right? And so in Hawaii or in the U.S. in the West, I was telling my daughter, like, so you can have a vote, but number one, the rich choose who gets the money that they need to even be put up for possible election. Number two, once they get into the position of being elected, if by some miracle, like an AOC, I mean, whatever you think, if AOC, let's assume AOC was authentically put there by mass crowd, small donor funding, and then once they get into that position, then the rich can put mountains of money into pushing and lobbying and just strong arming the politicians into making them into puppets. If the 0.1% who actually get there authentically to an election, then all the money is dumped into making and molding the politician and manipulating them into being a puppet of the rich. So anyway, so my point is, and my daughter, oh yeah, that makes total sense. So, it's like, if, it's like, imagine if it's like, imagine, so the U.S. is like this. It's either, imagine you and your brother are voting on what to have for a pizza party. Should we have pepperoni pizza or mushroom pizza or anchovy pizza? And daddy really likes anchovies, and both of you like pepperoni, and so you both vote for pepperoni. And then daddy takes out a gun, like a slingshot gun, because I want to get too violent. But it's like, and I threaten both of you, go like, you all have to vote for anchovies or you're gonna get it. So that's called threat of violence, coercion. That's called a U.S. military force, right? So forcing people to vote a way, which is what the U.S. does all the time, is one way that you can vote. Or you can you say, oh, I'll give you guys $10 if you all vote for anchovies. So you can literally buy the elections out. So one or the other way, that's not fair. And so the kids, they totally get it. Like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense, Dad. That's why there's no democracy in the U.S. and Greece. And I had to debunk American, Australian, New Zealand, and British videos for kids about what democracy is because of how stupid it is and how incorrect it is. Right? I was like, Greece never had a democracy, neither did Rome, and Hawaii did before the U.S. couped us. Cuba does. These other places do, but you know what they don't talk about in an American education system? What Cuba has, what Hawaii had in the 1800s, what China is, what Vietnam is. They don't want to talk about any of that because, they're racist, capitalist, colonial shitheads, and they don't have any democracy, and they don't have freedom of speech. Because if you had freedom of speech, you would let Hawaiians speak Hawaiian and teach Hawaiian history, but you don't do that. So, not that I'm a free speech absolutist, but even on those basic grounds, there's no such thing as freedom of speech. Freedom of speech means let people speak their indigenous languages, right? But no, we can't do that. That's the real freedom of speech. It's not like, can I say the N-word? Like, what's the point of that other than to, back fucking Nazism? I forgot, that's the entire point of the West and the U.S. and the free countries of Europe is to back Nazism. I forgot. But let's pretend like you have any kind of moral anything. Imagine you have an ethical bone in your body. I know it's hard, white people. Freedom of speech is not about the freedom to say fucking N-words and slurs, right? We'll take it in your white bullshit ground. Freedom of speech ostensibly would be so that you could have discussions about what we can do to have a better country, democracy, community, right? It's not just to like hate and beat up on each other. I mean, there's even a handful of white people, but like, we can tolerate anything except intolerance. There's a few white people that figure this shit out, and then nobody follows that. They just back Nazis in Bolivia and then in Ukraine, Azov Battalion, ETIM. This, you back extremists, and then you fucking give Elon all of Twitter, and then he breaks it, which is just funny. Anyways, it's hard to talk about that topic without getting very into that, but coming back to what I was saying with the zombie democracy. So in the sense of democracy, today is election day, but we still, as I said earlier, we still have the board, It's always the board. The board does a vote, right? The board votes. The board of directors vote at the Walton Corporation. The board of directors vote, 7-1 to give, $5 billion worth of bonuses to themselves and to give their employees 7.50 per hour. They vote on that stuff. They do vote. That's what the boardroom, boardroom. That's where there has never been anything but executive boardroom democracy. In the entire Western history of the world. This is who has always been the people that have voted. It's a bunch of dudes in fucking suits and a token woman and a token black person if the times called for it, like 2020. But it has always been a boardroom from Greece, Rome, Britain to the United States. It's rich white dudes sitting around doing the actual vote. It's called, sometimes they call it, it's the Roman Senate, it's the Greek toga party, it's the British, it's the British in their palace, it's the French at Versailles, sitting around the aristocracy, puttering their noses, putting on their 76 layer cakes, and trying to put a silk scarf on the Dauphine. It's the same people making all the decisions. Whether the masses get to play election booth coloring book games called voting on November 5th or not, there's never been any democracy. There has been of democracy, but it's always the votes of a tiny minority of people that have actually mattered. Now, sometimes they disagree. So maybe the Elon at one point, he's like, well, I'm making a lot of money with Chinese auto manufacturing. And, let's say like the CEO of Microsoft is like, well, maybe I could make some more money if we keep selling, doing deals, shipping semiconductors over and doing computers, hardware for China. So we don't want to start war with China, right? And then the military, imagine one of these dudes is like a tech, business that's operating more, he feels like he can make more money not starting war with China and Russia at the same time, along with fucking half of the Middle East and Africa, right? And then there's but then like the CEO of Raytheon, right? And a billionaire investor into Raytheon and Northrop Grumman is like, but I can make more money starting wars, right? So then there's a disagreement between two rich billionaire or millionaire white dudes in the democracy. And then they will argue to each other, well, if we start the war in Russia and China right now, I can sell another $100 billion worth of broken Stinger missiles and malfunctioning mothballed American tanks that don't even fucking work. I can sell, 7 nanometer, and then the Mr. Fang Corporation is like, what? I want to make more money selling semiconductor chips in China, and I also have a solar investment, and China is worth over 50-60% of all solar photovoltaic silicon and the basic products, and also the technology is coming out of China. So I don't want war with China right now because I need to make money with China. It's not because he gives a fuck about Americans, it's because he's making money with China, just like Elon was making some money in China, and he's like, he was a little bit on the fence on some issues. But that's still a disagreement between two rich white dudes, not the masses of the people, right? And those two, so there are different spheres of influence within the rich white dude, non-democratic, oligarchic boards of the Western capitalist, not democratic world, right? And they do vote differently in their private boardrooms that you don't have any access to in DC, in Silicon Valley, and in Wall Street, that you will never have access to. But that doesn't make it that. So you could say democracy happened on the golf course. Democracy happened, right? Democracy happened at the Davos, Switzerland, $50,000 a night, President Wilson suite conversation. Democracy happened because 5 white billionaires voted one way and 4 voted another way. But that's the best democracy. That's not democracy you will ever have in the West. That's still what you have, right? That is what you have always had. And that's what moves all the politics in the United States. It's not what anyone fucking thinks. If you have a net worth underneath $100 million. Voting, so so voting does not mean you have democracy if the results are undone by military force. All the political options are paid puppets of a plutocracy. By extension, any capitalist country of any size, really, if you have a capitalist country, you automatically do not have democracy, I would argue. If you have a capitalist country that does not have a countervailing force of the people's power, right? Some kind of, let's say, I don't know, Communist Party or some other structure of mass aggregation of community forces plus the on-the-ground grassroots organizations that is capable of countering the capitalist forces. If you have a capitalist country, you de facto do not have democracy. If you have a capitalist country, you have a de facto authoritarian regime of decrepit old fucking zombies. Period. So every white country is not a democracy. Every white country is what they claim to want to fight. They are all authoritarian regimes run by dictators who have forced labor. They're called private prisons. They have forced labor, called all of African labor that Germany, Sweden, Austria, Italy, France all benefit from. There is no European country that has ever had or has democracy because it has capitalism, period. And then other reasons it's also not democratic. The U.S. has violated Hawaii. Or another way is if there is a referendum by another country to join or not to join a country, then you also don't have democracy. If you don't allow if a referendum is rigged so that you have two options that are to either stay and be a slave or stay and be only slightly a slave. That's what the U.S. gave Hawaii. That is also not democratic. That's important because the United States accuses Russia of not being democratic and accuses Russia of treating Eastern Ukraine undemocratically. But I don't know if I argued it on this video channel. I'm sure I've done it on the Twitch channel. Russia is more democratic with certainly countries other than Russia than the United States is with other countries like Hawaii. Russia has been more democratic, far more democratic with Ukraine than the United States has ever been with anyone, and including Hawaii. And I have specific receipts for that. Let's go through a little bit of this. So we know U.S. West has never had democracy. They banned our language. I mean, I'm just gonna play this because that's what time it is.
We are not American. We are not American. We are not American. We are not American. Say it in your heart. Say it when you sleep. We are not American. We will die as Hawaiians. We will never be Americans. The Americans, my people, are our enemies, and you must understand that. They are our enemies. They took our land. They imprisoned our queen. They banned our language. They forcibly made us a colony of the United States. America always says they are democratic. Lies! That is a lie! They have never been democratic with Native people. They have never been democratic with Indians. They have never been democratic with Hawaiians. The United States of America is the most powerful imperialist country in the world. In the world. They control the United Nations. They control the Pacific Ocean. All these nuclear submarines circulating throughout the Pacific. The United States of America is a death country. It gives death to Native people. And the only way to fight the United States of America is to be political. Coup-eh! 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 Fight! Fight! Fight!
So anyways, the U.S. banned Hawaiian language and culture, stole our land, imprisoned our leaders, poisons our water, massacres, incarcerates Native Hawaiians like myself to this day. There is no one that we can vote for in the United States to stop this U.S. genocide. There has never been, there still is not democracy. Certainly not for Native Hawaiians, but there's not democracy for anyone, even white people. Even middle class white people in the United States really don't have democracy when it comes down to it. They have a better deal. They have a better place amongst their horrible oligarchic system, but they don't have democracy. What do Hawaii, Ukraine, Taiwan, and Bolivia have in common? Imperial capitalists from the U.S. collaborating with local far-right and wealthy elite to the detriment of the masses, and then mass global propaganda to make it stick in media, movies, and history books to airbrush the atrocities. So I don't know if I've gone through this one, but anyways, there's a lot going on here, so I'm not going to spend time on every single slide, but I feel like you might have heard about this if you follow me. Again, China is not ringing the United States in with military bases. The United States is ringing China in. Every military base you see there, that is a violation of democracy. We did not ask for the U.S. military bases in Hawaii. The people of Okinawa have been demanding with 70 to 90% mass protests to get the U.S. military bases out of Okinawa. People of Guam do not want the military bases in Guam. Every single little star-spangled aircraft on that list is a violation of democracy, which is on each one of those is another tick mark in the United States undemocratic box. The United States is the most authoritarian, the most dictatorial regime in the world, and every one of those little military bases is just one representation of that. The United States literally called Taiwan an unsinkable aircraft carrier, referring to the offensive nature of strategies used to contain communism during the Cold War. The U.S. containment policy in Asia was intended to wall off communism. Literally, if capitalism is the death of democracy, it is anti-democratic. Capitalism results and makes plutocracy that warps and distorts democracy into sham voting, where you have an illusion of choice. The United States' entire purpose is to maintain capitalism, and by extension, the United States' entire existence is to maintain global non-democracy, right? By extension, communism is an communist forces and communist ideology and non-capitalistic, which resulting in plutocratic structures, are I would argue they are preconditions to have democracy. If you have a capitalist country that is controlled, you have no possibility of democracy. And not only that, you have a country that is enforcing across the planet Earth anti-democracy. Spreading capitalism is spreading authoritarianism. Spreading capitalism is spreading unfreedom. It's spreading slavery. I mean, literally, because there's mass enslavement in every place the United States shows up, including in Hawaii, where we have the highest prison industrial complex is Pacific Islanders and Native Hawaiians. Where we have U.S. as most per capita bases. Everywhere there's a military base, there is especially sexual slavery, especially of Asian women, in places like Korea. So the U.S. is the number one force of spreading the opposite of democracy while being the best at lying about that shit. Congress has removed the ban on funding of neo-Nazis. Anyways, this is about more specifically Ukraine, but this is another example of how the U.S. has not had democracy. U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland said, "Fuck the EU," and U.S. She is currently in Biden's cabinet, and she backed the coup. A crisis led to a violent coup overthrowing UK's elected president, and Nuland not only exclaimed "fuck the EU" when they attempted to broker a democratic election. She chose like in a non-democratic way, right? Victoria Nuland was the representative of the board, right? She was these undead liches, and she handpicked Yatsenyuk was the name of the person that she chose to run Ukraine with Nazi leadership around him. He was an economic specialist trained in neoliberal economic policies through World Bank, IMF, Harvard Business School sort of education, surrounded by fascists. That was handpicked by the United States. again, undemocratically. So this is an example of you have a vote, right? What's an example of how you can have a vote with no democracy? You have a vote, and then with military force and threat and funding and arming, you undo the result of a vote. So this is one of hundreds of examples of the United States having votes that are result in non-democratic outcomes. Fuck the EU. Anyways, so Maidan protests. Anyways, Poland, Germany, and France negotiated a deal for the Maidan demands and an early election. But then the U.S. undid that election, and neo-Nazis instead attacked the government and took over. And that's why you have a huge, the biggest, one of the biggest Nazi far right elements in the world is headquartered in Ukraine. There are only one of two countries. The United States is the only other country that votes against a UN resolution to stand against Nazism, racism, and xenophobia. It's Ukraine and the U.S. because Ukraine is the Nazi capital of the world. With the U.S., the U.S. is the Nazi capital of the world that puts all of its Nazis into Ukraine to try to stop the spread of counter-hegemonic forces like democracy. Anyways, in Bolivia, another government stimulus package. So in Elon specifically, speaking of democracy and Twitter and free speech and all of this, all those nice things that he claims to be about, the U.S. backed a coup multiple times. In fact, 3 times in the last 4 years, the U.S. has backed coups in Bolivia to undo the outcome of democratic elections, resulting in the mass murder of indigenous people, including in one event, 9 corpses in 24 hours with literal Sieg Heiling Nazis, the descendants of the Third Reich from Germany, who had moved to Bolivia and began and festered there. And the U.S. and Elon Musk personally funded and supported the far right, who murdered indigenous socialist MAS party in Bolivia. So that's just another example of the undemocratic United States, right? We must have Hawaii to help us get our share of China. That was President McKinley. Again, President McKinley is number 4 from the left, right? That skeletal undead lich that looks like he's gonna hang out with Roosevelt, right? Another one of the rich white capitalist psychopaths. So McKinley in the 1890s said we must have Hawaii to get our share of China. Hawaii was treated as the place with the perfect servants. That's literally ads that Mr. Dole Pineapple put out about us. Hawaii is the linchpin of U.S. military strategy, and it was a staging ground for U.S. wars in Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. Over half of every war U.S. has ever fought, and 70 to 80% of all wars the U.S. has ever fought since World War II have been commanded, organized, staged, practiced for, and launched from Hawaii. And that's why Red Hill exists, is to fund the entire U.S. empire and 26 other NATO countries and AUKUS affiliated countries that are practiced, trained, fueled, and launched from Hawaii. So that's why Hawaii is so important. If the U.S. was to lose Hawaii, that would be a huge death knell to the entire U.S. empire. How are they going to fight the war, their most important war on China, if they don't have Hawaii to start proxy wars in Taiwan from? And so that's why we have to fight even harder, because not just against our own extinction as Native Hawaiians, but because the United States is using Hawaii as its Death Star, basically, to destroy everything and control everything undemocratically. Anyways, in the 1890s, over 95% of Wikanaka-Maoli Native Hawaiians signed petitions against the annexation of the sovereign, internationally recognized country of Hawaii by the U.S. So much for so-called Western democracy. We're talking about democracy. Speaking of democracy, this is a literal, this is the petition, one of many that were passed around. You remember Mr. McKinley we're just talking about? I will take Hawaii so we, the rich white capitalist men who control the United States, right? We the undemocratic plutocrats of the United States must have Hawaii so we can get China. We can take trillions of silk and tea and fine products from China, like the British, right? And this was McKinley being specifically petitioned by 95% of Hawaii, right? We, the undersigned Native Hawaiian citizens and residents of the District of Honolulu on the island of Oahu, each district of every island had one of these. We are members of the Hawaiian Patriotic League of the Hawaiian Islands and others who are in sympathy with the said league, and earnestly we protest against the annexation of the said Hawaiian Islands to the United States of America in any form or any shape. 95% of the I don't know if you know what that number is, because maybe they don't teach you how to do math and statistics in the United States, which makes sense because then you might actually know something about what votes mean. 94. This is, I mean, the number of people that voted against the annexation of Hawaii is greater than any vote that has ever happened ever in the United States for president or for Senate and these sorts of things. Hawaii was massively against it, and it makes sense why. Because Hawaii knew that if the United States took over Hawaii, the United States would probably ban our language. The United States would commit genocide against Native Hawaiians. The United States would impoverish us. They would destroy our universal health care and our massive system of worker cooperatives, nationalized industries, our socialist, actually democratic country that had, a system of outright anti-racism, right? Of all the things that American leftists say they want now, Hawaii already had, and it had more than that in the 1800s. And Hawaiians knew, because they knew who America was, that America would destroy Hawaii and they would roll all of our progress back, right? In the face of colonialism, in the face of capitalism, we had made mountains of progress, right? And had actual democracy, unlike Greece, Rome, Britain, United States, France, etc., ever has. Hawaii surpassed every Western country in every rubric. And Hawaiians, rightly and for very clear reasons, did not want to be part of the United States. Right? It's not like, oh, Hawaiians just were, I can see some white professor going, Russia paid Hawaiians to vote against the United States. China paid Hawaiians to vote against the United States. That's why Hawaiians were manipulated by some evil authoritarian regime. I can see them writing their article right now. I've actually read some of this bullshit saying Hawaiians were narco traffickers. It's not like British opium wars and American Afghan opium smuggling is not like major central to global capitalism and colonial capital flows, right? No, it's Hawaiians that were narco trafficking in collusion with evil Chinese people. I've actually read people with 8-year degrees who are professors of economics and history at prestigious universities. Their entire career is based on writing complete abject lies about Hawaii and China. That's how you become a China expert. It's basically to be a brain dead zombie. That's how you get a PhD in the West, apparently. So, anyways, the U.S. was again anti, but the point is that that's not democratic. That's the U.S. forcibly made Hawaii a colony after this happened. They invaded, they pointed guns, and they said, you are going to join the United States. You will be annexed by the United States by force, or we will kill you all. The USS Boston was a specific military, U.S. federal military war machine that they brought. So that's not democratic. And again, that's one of hundreds of coups. And a coup is the absolute opposite of, it is the polar opposite of democracy. So whenever you see the word coup, that's not just, Americans have no idea about anything. Europeans, they don't know shit about anything. But let me tell you something, okay? You don't know anything about violence and political violence and authoritarian dystopia until you have suffered a coup and an ongoing coup. Because Hawaii is in an ongoing coup. You don't even know anything about world politics. You just hear these words. Oh, there's a coup over there. There's a coup in Africa and a coup. Nobody knows. You say coup and they think a cuckoo clock. Nobody knows shit because you're too white. If your country has ever performed a coup and they have not immediately undone and repatriated the billions or trillions of dollars stolen from that coup country and made decades of concrete changes and assistance in all branches to repair the damage of that violation of the sovereignty and the democracy of that other country, your country can never be thought of as democratic. And that goes for every Western country. And that goes for Japan. And that goes for, the puppet state of South Korea. That goes for, but all of Europe. And that goes for Canada and the United States. If your country has ever performed a coup, your country is the complete opposite of democracy. How did your citizens allow that to happen? The answer is you don't have a democracy, because even if your citizens didn't want your country to coup to other country, and some of your citizens are fucked up Nazi imperialists and they want that coup to happen, if your citizens allow a coup to happen, you do not have a democracy. And you should stop talking. You should fix your country through dual power structure, supporting indigenous and black struggles, before you open your mouth and talk about China or Russia or any other country and how bad their democracy and authoritarian they are. I see everyone left the stream when I brought up Russia because a bunch of white people can't handle reality. And, okay. Anyways, the U.S. was, again, anti-democratic with Hawaiians in 1959. It was probably a bunch of white mastodon people showed up and then they can't handle truth because they're too privileged. The U.S. was, again, anti-democratic with Hawaiians in 1959. The UN requires a fair referendum because black people knew that social media was fucked up, and before Elon Musk took over. And everyone leaves to other sites, but it's privileged white people leave to other sites because they're afraid that dystopia is going to happen. It's like, motherfucker, we can be on any site and it's going to be racist, wrong shit said about us. It's only white people that fucking leave sites when, oh no, it's going to turn bad. Like, this motherfucking thing has always been bad. You know, it's like, and then people like me, I'm over there going like, this is why you're not. People are like, Silver Spook, how come you're the only indigenous person posting constantly on the so-called better site called Mastodon? And like, because Mastodon is full of white privileged tech nerds who have too much money and status and no self-consciousness to realize there are very few people or almost no people of color and very few indigenous people regularly posting because y'all are fucking racist, privileged fucking pricks. And the world has always been racist and fucked up against us. And now you think it's gonna get bad. Twitter's not changing that much. This is a bunch. Anyway, so that's a whole other thing. I said this is why nobody's hanging around you, because you're a bunch of fucking selfish, stuck-up pricks who think that you're building utopia in your walled garden. And I'm not even saying that it's a bad platform. I'm on it because I hope that one day it isn't that. But you know, let's be real. Like, let's be real here, motherfuckers. The U.S. was again anti-democratic with Hawaiians in 1959. The UN requires a fair referendum regarding independence or statehood, but the U.S. only included options for territory status or statehood, flouting international law. Yet U.S. complains of Russia's sham referenda in Ukraine. So this is the one where all the white people are going to run away again, and they're going to call me authoritarian genocide doer. While being a white genocide doer, they're going to call me a genocide doer. So Russia says it won Ukraine annexation vote, and what U.S. calls a sham. You know I know that because this is what every time I do this, every time I post anything like this, I have about 25 white people show up. Anyways, to tell me how to be indigenous right, not to overburden stressed Americans, but Native Hawaiians, Kanaka Maoli, resisted the bogus 1959 statehood vote. There was no option for independence, and eligibility wasn't observed, allowing military members and settlers to swamp the vote. It's hard not to reflect on this fact now. So, you know, again, I want to, you know, just to preemptively, you know, just to preempt all of the idiot yellow and blue flag people that are going to show up. I'm not saying that Russia has never done anything bad and everything they do is perfectly in line with the best of human civilization and democracy, etc. But the U.S. is in no place to, again, they have no place to call another country another country's elections sham referenda, because the U.S. has done multiple times to one country, Hawaii, what it is accusing Russia, and it within the last 50 years or less, and actually it's an ongoing process. This is not like the U.S. didn't occupy Hawaii, force Hawaii into statehood, and then it's over. No, U.S. is in an ongoing illegal occupation, military occupation. It's just it's brainwashing its white citizens a lot better nowadays. That's the only difference between 1959, 1893, and 2022. Is you got a lot stronger brainwashing, right? But this idea that history happened a long time ago. No, history happened a long time ago, and then it got worse. Like, bad things happened a long time ago, Silver Spook. Why are you bringing up what happened 100 years ago? Yeah, bad shit happened 100 years ago, and now you're making it worse. Like, you're going to end the entire fucking world. Like, 2 of our islands weren't uninhabitable or nearly uninhabitable when the U.S. first occupied Hawaii. Since then, you have gotten worse. The water is undrinkable in huge parts of my entire home island. The majority of the population of Hawaii's water source is threatened, is currently or will soon be undrinkable. So that you've gotten worse in your. It's not gotten better. This is the brainwashing. Is the people think like, oh, the word progressive is a word that is used to lie and to brainwash into thinking that the West, that Europe, that US, Britain, and any of these white capitalist countries have ever made progress in the last 500 years or really forever. The answer is they have not progressed. They have gotten worse. But this is, for white people, it's like, I feel better because I'm not living as a fucking peasant in Ireland or in Britain or in France. And now that I came to America, everything got better. Things might have gotten a little bit better for a handful of white people who were being oppressed in their Europe when they showed up and they were white slave owners. Right? But then they forget, oh, that's right. But we just forget the fact that it's because you own fucking slaves and you benefited from white supremacy and imperialism. But the truth is, not everything is the worst. There has been only regress. There should be the regressive party because there has never been progress. The Western capitalist colonized world was never capable of destroying all life on Earth, right? With nuclear war like it is now. The level of environmental degradation that you have visited white capitalist colonial countries and people on the rest of the world has never been at a level of severity as it is in 2020s. And literally all the entire ecosystems, the environment, and the total suffering is at its level. The only way people can go, oh, we got progress, is because of the progress of socialist countries like China, who did the vast majority, 80% of all poverty alleviation. When you add the socialist and the communist and indigenous successes to the capitalist regression, then it looks like there's progress. But if you subtract the anti-colonial, communist, and indigenous world, there has never been progress in the US, in Britain. Everything has only gotten worse, and they just have gotten better at lying and brainwashing the masses of their own populations about that fact. Hawaii is worse off, I would argue, now than it was in 1959. I mean, at least my parents, my dad could afford to have some kind of decent living working one job. Hawaii is worse off now in your ongoing coup. So don't tell me, oh, Silver Spook, you're doing so great now. Fuck you. Or just be like one of those people who looks at my tweets and looks and consumes my videos and my content that I take hours and relive trauma, remembering my mother's genocide and having her Hawaiian beaten out of her. Be one of those white people that consumes my content, hours of it, that I have to hurt myself to give you, and then eats it up like a capitalist, selfish person, and then doesn't give me anything. And just say, I don't care about indigenous people because I just don't want to feel sad. I don't want to hear what you're saying because it makes me feel bad about the government and the corporations that I work for and the white privilege that I have. And just say, I don't care about Hawaiians. Just say, I don't care about any indigenous people. And I just want to die selfish and sadly as a white rich person, slightly richer than the other ones, as we all go down the Titanic called the Western sinking ship and freeze and starve in the dark in Europe and US. Just be like, I'm a coward. Just be a coward and fuck off on my stream. Anyways, Americans think that Hawaiians lived in huts prior to U.S. forced Americanization of the U.S. The U.S. actually, in case you didn't know though, people are going to Silver Spook. It was so much America saved Hawaii. Progress has been made. Progress, I hate this word. I hate every English word, but progress is one of my, civilization and progress. Those are some of my most hated words. But anyways, because civilization never existed in the West. Americans, neither has democracy. But you see, every English word is a paradoxical, nonsensical word if you look closely enough at it, because it was spoken by serial murderers, serial killers, serial thieves, and serial liars. So how can it not? You know what I'm saying? Americans think Hawaiians in huts forced prior to U.S. forced Americanization of us. The U.S. actually deindustrialized Hawaii before 1898. We already had electricity, mass transit, railroads. Iolani Palace had electric lights before the White House. So I'm sorry if you haven't, just in case people, because somebody's going to watch this thing and they're going to be like, Silver Spook, you don't have any receipts. And number one, I know Holly is dropping a lot of them, but I want to put it in video format in case people think that, oh, no, Hawaii is so much better off now. No, Hawaii was far more advanced and more industrialized and had a higher literacy rate by far than U.S. and every other European country. Hawaii had a 98% literacy rate that was in 1869. It surpassed every European country. Civilized accomplishments of books of law, newspapers, agricultural products, Bibles, because only Christianity was civilized at the time, which Hawaiians knew, but we didn't express that because we know that you were racist, religious, fanatical, insane people in Europe. Textbooks, as well as other examples of civilized accomplishments. European visitors to the Paris Exposition were ruled by monarchs. Again, only their highborn were privy to excellent education. So only the board, like these people, were privy to excellent educations. I would argue that education was not that excellent, because if it was an excellent education, well, they wouldn't be wrecking their own countries and it wouldn't be full of lies. But it was slightly less lie-filled if you were the daughter of a Windsor or a Parisian lord or lady or a viscount or some shit. Which were the same thing as another lie is that capitalism and feudalism were separate, and they're not. We went from one to the other, and that was the progress. This is false. Feudalists, capitalists, the kings were rich, and the CEOs of the 17, 18, and 1900s and today also had hereditary privilege. So the idea that it's feudalism and then the capitalism and then we moved and we got better. Richard Wolff likes to talk about this. I disagree with him, actually. There is no difference. It's just colonialism expanded the level of monetary exploitation that was possible after the 16, 1700s. None of these, because that's one of the lies, is we got better and that means we can get better. No, you're not getting better. You're getting worse. So I actually disagree with Richard Wolff on that. The West has gotten worse off. The other places have gotten better, like Hawaii and China and Vietnam and Cuba and indigenous peoples in Turtle Island and South Central America. And the global South Africa is doing better and better. The U.S. and the West have gone downhill. And they gotten more feudal. That's why you have techno kings like Elon, self-labeled techno king of SpaceX, Tesla, and now Twitter. It's a crumbling facade, but I mean, feudalism is why I made Neofeud. That's part of the point, is to break the myth of progress, of Western progress. The island is ahead in literacy, and the enlightened countries of Europe are behind it. European visitors. Anyway, so anyway, I'm just dropping them receipts. Universal healthcare. So coming back to, I'm like way off Wendell and Wild. I know this, but I wanted to kind of. This is what I really want to talk about. So that's why I front loaded it with the fun, entertainment stuff. But because it is election day. People in the United States, right? 70, 80, 90%, right? I forget the exact number. Majority of the United States wants Medicare for all, M4A, right? Universal healthcare was established a century before any country in Europe even came close to it. And I argue 0 countries in Europe have universal healthcare, because if you're a black or you're Muslim or you're Asian in Europe, you're treated as a second-class citizen, including in the medical system. So Germany, Sweden, Finland, these so-called, they don't have universal healthcare, because black and brown bodies have multiples worse health outcomes, prison incarceration rates, and that means you have universal white universal white partially not privatized healthcare, actually, when you look closely at it. Bernie Sanders and the so-called social democrat, whatever these bullshit artists are, they're actually the best Nazis, because they maintain the social democrat parties and the Green Party is actually the biggest pushers of imperialism and fascism when you look very closely. So I don't believe any of this bullshit. The lie is that there is any universal health anything in Europe. There's universal Nazism in Europe. That's what they have. National socialism for white nationals. And even then, mostly the rich ones. And, like Kolomoisky and like the children of the BMW and the Volkswagen and the Deutsche Bank fortunes, who are all, their parents were all Nazis, by the way. So they are the richest couple, the richest brother and sister in Germany are descendants of Nazis who had none of their wealth stripped. In fact, and they're chair and CEOs of huge board. They're the board members, the zombie board members, the zombie Nazi board members of entities like Volkswagen and Deutsche Bank. So Hawaii had actual universal health care, right? So that's like actually for everyone, right? and actually free, right? In Hawaii, along with mass affordable transit, virtually no homelessness, and a robust system of worker cooperatives, Asians and other people of color prospered collectively in pre-U.S. occupation Hawaii. We had more democracy than the U.S. ever did. So, in 1859, Queen's Hospital provided healthcare at no charge to the people of Hawaii. After the illegal military occupation by the U.S., there was a concerted attempt to defund and destroy the system. So, so again, the closest thing in the 1800s was Otto von Bismarck in the 1880s began an attempt to have a system of mass collective health insurance. But again, it was collective, large scale health insurance. It wasn't universal, and it was never fully implemented. In New Zealand, in the 1920s, 30s, they tried another system. It was never universal. It was not universal free of charge healthcare. It did not. There was massive racism in New Zealand, as there is today, and that's why Maori people have to still fight for their rights. So again, you see what I'm saying? Hawaii, in order to have democracy, you also have to not have racist policies against ethnic groups. There are 0 European and Euro settler colonies that have ever achieved that in the history of the planet Earth. So every European and Euro settler colony has never had democracy. Hawaii actually had racial equality in the actual concrete senses of the ability for Asians, for black people to be citizens and to own businesses and to acquire what America has democracy. Well, what happened to Tulsa? Remember last week we were talking about the Lovecraft Country and the Tulsa massacre to stop black communities and black wealth from building up, and the military blew them up, right? What about all the Chinatown massacres when Asian wealth was building up in California, in Portland, in Seattle? What about the fire bombings? What about all of that suppression of Jewish people in Europe, of black and brown people, of Muslims in Europe? That has never ended, and it still goes on, of indigenous people in New Zealand, of indigenous people in Australia, of Chinese and Asian people, especially right now in the little sherp of the United States of Australia, right? The answer is there cannot be democracy. There cannot be democracy in any country unless you are seriously and concretely addressing and not just like I tried one time because I had a black president. Unless you are addressing the economic inequality and the racial inequalities on top of that and how they intersect, you don't have democracy. So there's no European country with democracy, period. Ever. But Hawaii had democracy. So after the illegal military occupation by the U.S., there was a concerted attempt to defund and destroy the system. And the reason why they defunded and destroyed Hawaii's universal health care is because they don't want democracy. They wanted to maintain they wanted Hawaiians to die earlier and faster. And they wanted to make money selling expensive health care from capitalist medical institutions like Kaiser, like all your giant pharmaceutical companies, just like everything else. So again, this when the U.S. destroyed Hawaii, it was number one, it destroyed the universal health care that Americans want universal health care. They want Medicare for all. If America had a democracy, then you would get it, but you don't get it because there's no democracy. And that's just another way. I have 50,000 examples of how there's no such thing as democracy in the U.S. But, anyways. The Sun Yat-sen is fifth from the right. Sun Mei, his brother, was a rancher on Maui. Hawaii had prosperous hui or worker cooperatives between Hawaiian and Chinese when the U.S. and West treated them both as coolie or servant labor, mass lynched Asians, banned them from all but women's work, laundromats, and restaurants. Sun Mei would later sell all of his holdings and join Sun Yat-sen to lead revolution in China. So China is another place that at least has some degrees of democracy. And again, there's no perfect democracy. No place is perfect, but they have the capacity for democracy because they're not ruled by a plutocracy, at least not currently. And they do have wealthy people, but the important difference is, do the wealthy people just make all decisions that impact in the most important aspects of people's lives, all of the citizens' lives, right? And the answer is no, and that's why there's been 15 billionaire beheadings and massive amounts of punishment and the world's largest IPO, the world's largest capitalist attempt to go public was actually stopped by the Communist Party of China. and the government of China. Whereas in the United States, the U.S. has never actually brought to heal any of its wealthy elite. They have only ever gotten off with at best a wrist slap, if not given get. The U.S. can violate all of the people and the government of the United States and just take a shit on everything, and they just get another fistful of billions of dollars. But see, in countries like Cuba and Vietnam and China, they might have wealthy elements, and usually they're remnants of colonial capitalist, especially along the coasts of China and Vietnam, and especially in cities like Saigon and in places like Hong Kong, which is China, but it was a British occupation by a bunch of these kind of people. Right? British rich and British colonial officers. And those places, as you know, what makes it democratic, or at least more democratic, is the fact that the decisions of the wealthy and the desires of the wealthy is that it is not a board sitting on all of China deciding. It's not a board of all their billionaires going, okay, well, you know what we're going to do is we're going to like unravel all the environmental protections and make sure everybody lives in smog so that we can make more money, right? Like the United States. We're going to make sure everybody has boil water advisories and lives with category 7 pyro-NATOs so we can make more money, right? Think about your environmental conditions right now, right? With your infrastructure falling apart. See, rich people in China would like that to happen. And then the Communist Party of China and the government and the people collectively together with whatever power all of that community that they do have. And 1 out of 9 people is a member of the Communist Party, by the way. It's like basically like every household basically has at least one person in that somewhere. It's 100+ million people, and that entity approaches the board, right? It approaches all of these assholes and it goes, "No, you assholes, you're not going to get what you want. In fact, we're going to chop the head of 2 of you are going to lose your head, and the other 4 you're going to prison for the next 60 years. Or you can give us all the money you have, shut the fuck up, and be happy that we don't take more." And so that's a functioning democracy, but that nothing like that exists in the United States, Britain, France, Spain. You know, the thing about Europe is just like a satellite. Europe is just like Europe is the 50th state. Europe is the real 50th state of the United States. The European Union is the real 50th state because Hawaii is not a part of the United States. It's an illegal military occupation according to the UN, the High Commissioner on Human Rights, who literally said that. The 50th state is not Hawaii of the United States, it's Europe. So Europe doesn't even they don't have any countries. They just do whatever the military says. But China has functioning democracy where they can say, don't spend all that money on weapons, don't spend all that money, and don't blow up other countries, which is why they don't. Yeah, they haven't done a single invasion, and when the U.S. has done 200 in the last, has 1 military base by request of other entities, and the U.S. has fucking 800 all over the rest of the world, and they're not going around invading other countries. They're making win-win, cooperative, equal, beneficial trade arrangements, right? And the reason why China is able to do that is because they have a functioning internal democracy that also does its best to practice democracy with between nations, like Vietnam. And that's why Vietnam and China are coming closer together. And China and Africa are coming closer together. China and Central and South America are coming closer together. And Hawaii and China are going to get closer together. And then fuck you, America. Because they have functioning democracy with socialist policies, with Communist Party, with actual equal treatment of ethnic minorities. Even I know I can't convince most white idiots to believe that on this stream. I don't have time. But I wish I was born as a part of the as an autonomous. I wish Hawaii was an autonomous region of China because I wouldn't be fucking having my language banned right now. Okay, and I know that all of your propaganda is gonna tell you, but Uyghurs this and Tibetan that and all this bullshit. But and then you're gonna call me genocide denier. And if you want to just leave, then just fucking leave. But let's imagine that because you follow me for some time, you respect what I have to say. Just consider looking into some links that Holly has dropped, or look at some of my other videos and or social media, and think about your positionality as a white person, not knowing a lot that you are now knowing after following the streams that I do for free because nobody fucking pays me. because of the kind of place that the United States and the West is. And then consider the possibility that what you think about places like China and Vietnam and all these other places that are evil, bad, backward, authoritarian, savage, just consider that maybe everything you think you know is wrong because of all of the reasons that I have outlined. Or you can just say, Silver Spook, I don't believe anything you've said, and fuck indigenous people. Just say, I don't care about indigenous people and what they have to say. I just believe white people who are experts on places that we've been colonizing for centuries. I don't believe indigenous people. I don't believe black people. I believe white people. I believe white rich people who with pedigree from fucking fancy universities. Just think about the words coming out of your mouth though when you say that bullshit sentence to yourself. Just think about the bullshit coming out of your mouth. Or don't, and just be a normal Westerner. You know, just be like a normal Westerner, and be a fucking idiot. So, anyways, the something I said was important. So, but anyway, so that's a long one. I know I've been talking about for a long, but you know that is important because when we talk about democracy, you can't talk about democracy without talking about the fact that Blinken, the U.S., Europe is blasting the media with China and Russia are authoritarian, not democratic, not free. Greece just had that big referendum. Jeff Sachs dropped a bunch of truth bombs. Jeff Sachs is like one of few white dudes who like routinely say true things, you know. And Jeffrey Sachs, you know, it's not coincidental that Jeff Sachs grew up around mass racist, white supremacist violence during the 60s, and he was like around the black struggles. And that's a lot of as a white dude, he's around a lot of black struggles, and he witnessed the massacre and mass illegal killings of black revolutionaries around him, and mass lockup of all of those people. And the white people who are capable of like kind of at least like you can't have a black experience, you can't have an indigenous experience, you can't have a global South experience, but like if you at least like understand, listen to, and learn from, and like try to support and get closer to those struggles of the most marginalized, like the black people in the United States, then you have the possibility of not being just completely fucked up and wrong on everything, basically, you know, especially when the things that matter, you know, because then, you know, and it tends to be those kind of people. Like you could be around a black struggle and then not taking lessons, obviously, and you just like fucked off and then had a nice life as a upper middle class suburbanite in the not black part of Michigan. That's possible. But maybe you take the lessons. And so, you know, anyways, so, but the point is that like, so the democracy is a thing that's being spread around. And obviously like you see what my actual agenda is to, or, you know, it's one of my things I wanted to do is I wanted to, because it is election day, I want to reinforce the idea that I'm not saying don't vote, right? But that the idea that voting, having a mechanical process, right? Of you get a paper that has Democrat and Republican options, right? To fill out with a pen, right? And then you submit these ballots to be counted by the government. Because there's a voting motions, right? And process, that means you have democracy. This is one of the major propaganda pieces, right? That says it's not even true because Russia and China both do have votes of sorts, right? But they don't have the votes that we count as votes, right? But just having a vote, and not to say that voting is bad, but the idea that the democracy is the mechanical process of voting is one of the lies that is used to maintain undemocratic plutocracies in the shadows. That's what I'm trying to say. And also all the history that I just pointed out. And so, anyway, okay, so I've gone off on that for a long time, and it's almost we're at the 2-hour mark already. Yeah, Big Tail is not even a U.S. citizen, so Big Tail can't even vote. So there you go, you know. Anyways, okay, so back to Wendell and Wild. I'm like way off Wendell. I'm way off the Wendell and Wild stuff, but Wendell and Wild, zombie democracies versus actual communities. And so, you know, some other stuff I wanted to talk about was that, you know, and so the prison industrial complex, that's a whole nother thing, right? That's part of this. The board members, right? These eldritch terrors, right? The eldritch terrors, the British, the French, the Austrian, the American, the Spanish, right? The Roman, the Italian. So those are the eldritch terrors. It's not the void. It's not the perverse. It's not the weird. The weird's fine and good. The weird is only an eldritch terror to supremacist fascists that want things to be normal, white, cis, heteronormative. Being weird is cool, right? That's why we like Wendell and Wild, and that's probably why you watch these streams. And so the board members are brought back from the dead, as I said earlier, in order to try to rig a vote. Right. So speaking of democracy, and then you have the local community of, they're mostly non-white, right? And there's a Hispanic investigator who is like looking into the crimes of Klaxon Corporation that is violating the community in Rust Bank in Wendell and Wild. And these guys are brought back specifically to rig the vote. They're brought back from the dead as zombie voters, right? To vote in favor of the rich corporate shitheads, the Elon types. And so then and what they want to do is to Wendell and Wild. And so it has a lot to say. Biggest villains aren't demons. The villain is the private prison system. Now, to be clear, not private prisons. I mean, there's a lot of levels to this. Number one, there's no such thing as a not private prison in the United States because there's no such thing as a public-private separation, really. Everything is a corporate state. Everything is capitalist run. So the idea that there's private prisons and public prisons, it's kind of a red herring in a lot of ways. But let's put that aside. One of the major things is that the prison system. The film explores the grim reality of private prisons, exposing how the business model has nothing to do with lowering crime rates. Wendell is a 13-year-old gothic girl who's always involved with trouble. I'm just trying to jump to the part of the prisons because we kind of went through the backstory already. Instead of working for cat's rehabilitation, the institution just cages her like an animal, deprives her of basic human rights. It's no wonder the cat grows to be so angry and defensive. Her story is paralleled by that of the demons. Wendell and Wild also begin the movie locked in a prison, and they're in that black and white striped prisoner's outfit in hell, the body of their father, Buffalo Belzer. Belzer punishes his sons because they try to reform the music park, and the huge demon uses to torture souls. However, as the movie's ending reveals, Belzer keeps Wendell and Wild locked because he fears they might go to Earth and be lost forever, just like their siblings. Prison is the only form of protection Belzer can. So it's kind of like it's kind of saying like Belzer is it's like the prison of overbearing parental, clutching onto children, basically. And he doesn't want to let them kind of do the things that they want to. It's as if locking people away without any kind of support would make them more obedient. And the thing is, the paradox is Belzer keeps on losing all of his kids, and he never sees them again. They go to the Earth. Belzer learns his error and invites his sons back to hell as free people, allowing them to work on their music park project. Anyways, yeah. So in the actual villain, right, is their enemy is a rigged prison system. While Wendell and Wild are teased to be villains, they actually become allies to Kat in their fight against Imgard and Lane Klaxon, a couple of millionaires who want to destroy the city and build a huge private prison in its place, with the approval of the governor. Their plan is to build a prison with tiny cells so that they can fit more inmates. And if they cut costs and they don't offer support, they are sure the prisoner will remain angry and lost, most likely returning to a life of crime, returning to prison. Finally, the couple also intends to invest in a second chance program through which they will crowd Cat school with teenagers exiting incarceration, not giving the school's personnel the means to deal with the rebellious youth. That way, there can be no recovery, and these young people will become inmates in their prison in no time. While the Klaxon plan might sound cartoonish, it actually reflects the logic behind real-world private prisons. A private prison is a business through which an investor builds a facility and oversees its functioning. The owners of private prisons make money by taking inmates in and getting paid by the government for each person they receive in the facility. So the more inmates a private prison gets, the more money it makes, and the less it takes care of the prisoners, the cheaper it is to maintain the institution. The side effect is prisoners who are mistreated are most likely to commit new crimes once they end their sentence. So, in the name of profit, a private prison actually helps keep crime rates high. The goal of a prison should be more than punishing people. By giving criminals adequate support, prisons can allow inmates to become. Anyways, so that is a major point of Wendell and Wild is the deep problems of the private prison industry, and not just this article is masking a lot of it, which is that prisons, even not private prisons, use prisoners as slave labor. For example, all the furniture in the White House is made for 25 to 30 cents an hour, just as one. Every major corporation, McDonald's, Walmart, all the electronics, Nvidia, like the device you're probably watching this on uses not just private, any prison labor. So after the 14th Amendment, the abolition of slavery in the U.S. Constitution was not actually an abolition of slavery, because it was simply a shifting of the slavery into it redefined slavery as a thing you could do to people who were convicted of crimes. So simple. All you do then is mass convict disproportionately non-white people of crimes, of any crime, and then you can enslave them. And that's what the United States has been doing for this entire time. So to just say it's private prisons is, while private prisons are terrible, that kind of shrouds the reality that all U.S. prisons under its racialized capitalist shadow slavery system, really, right? Slavery is just the slavery is just the optimum form of capitalism, because a worker, you have to pay, minimum wage ostensibly, right? Or you have to pay 10, 15, whatever dollars that you're paying. And so the profit margin is like 80, 90% or whatever it is. Unionized labor is worse, because you might have to pay a near living wage. Almost nobody has one of those in the United States, but you might have to pay $30, $40, $50, $60, right? And so your profit margins go down to, you still have profits, but it's dropping every time you raise the workers, the share of the productive output that goes to workers is going up. And so you're losing money as the wealthy capitalist plutocrat that runs the West and the corporation, etc. Now, prison labor means you give 1% or less. I think they've calculated it's basically negligible, right? You take some rotten cabbage and the tail of the ox you weren't even going to eat. That's why oxtail soup, turkey neck, stew are like the norm of non-white cooking. And it's cooked very well and better spiced, etc., than a lot of mainstream American food. But it's using the undesirable parts of the animals and the poultry and the vegetables. So you basically, it's barely any lodging. It's, the private prison industry is just the slavery industry. You give the slave as little lodging, you just keep him in a stable. You don't give him any water, you don't give him any bath, you don't give him, and then you blame them for their genetics, and Africans just smell bad. That's what they would say. And so you have 0.5% or 1% or less labor cost. So it's all profit. It's something they call super profits, 99.5% profit. And that's how the United States got more rich in a lot of ways than a lot of Western countries, is by having huge amounts of genocided, stolen indigenous land and super profit, super capitalism across the entire North American, pretty large continent, larger than Europe. Now, Europe got very rich also through colonialism, which is taking the wealth of the entire planet and bringing it in. And so it's kind of a combination of the U.S. slavery and continued slavery system, right, in the prisons, that all is part of what maintains those profits. And then also this differentials. It's really like Africa and Asia were Britain and France and Spain's prisons. And the U.S. had an internal prison, to make its money. It's really another way that you could think about it. And so, and Wendell Wild does deal directly with that. So that's one thing that's really good about the show, is it kind of the villain is directly it is the prison system in a lot of ways, and the prison industrial complex, which is, it's not just about imprisoning people because you like to torture people and lock them up for some weird power fantasy. It's like the prison mass and caging and putting people behind bars, and not just putting them behind bars and then getting money both to do that, right, from a corporate state, non-separation of business and government, that is the corporate state of the United States. And then also, it's not just prisoners in jail. There's prisoners that are doing mass amounts of labor, right? Like putting out all of California's wildfires for $1 or less per day or an hour, which is peanuts compared to the $30, $40, $50, $60, $70, $80, $100 you would have to pay a fireman if they were to, I mean, a fireman and a living wage fireman would be like $100, $200 an hour because California is expensive as hell. So you pay the prisoner $1 and you have a white, you know, a whip cracker, literally a white police officer unloading all of these black and white striped or orange shirted black people, it's mostly all black people, giving them, you know, fire hoses and sending them into extremely dangerous fires that you can and do frequently die as a black or a disproportionately non-white prison firefighter in California. So anyway, so that's still a system that continues to this day. So it's to make money, and that allows the rich to pay less taxes. That allows the people who need the firefighting, like private firefighting, because they let poor communities burn. So that George Lucas and rich people in California like that can have their personal mansions and their suburbs have their fires put out, and everyone else's can just burn for very cheap because you're using slave labor, right? Elon's cars and his spacecraft all use slave labor from these prisons, on top of oppressed labor that with unions having their union busters breaking up all their Tesla and SpaceX and etc. unions. And he mass fired Twitter, but that's a separate thing. So what Wendell and Wild is dealing with is actually very much also on that topic. And so also and then also I will say, you can't have a democracy when you have mass numbers of the population incarcerated, not just because, well, you have laws like Biden was campaigning for Republicans to maintain laws that stopped ex-prisoners from voting. So it's literally mass lock up black and brown people and poor people, and then literally, not that the U.S. democracy functions, but then you just ban them from voting whatsoever because they have a criminal record. And so that also, right? So the prison industrial, and so is in many ways, the United States racist plutocracy and its prison industrial complex also subvert the possibility of the U.S. even having a democracy. And then there's voter suppression, and there's so many other things going on. But in all these ways, that's why I want to talk about the zombie, undead non-democracy that was dead on arrival from 2,000 years ago. Really, there's never been any of that. Versus communities and so economic activity. So like people having, it's not like the Rust Bank, the brewery in Wendell and Wild's town will not necessarily save everything. But like in Hawaii, where we had worker cooperatives and we had systems of community-operated businesses with not for capitalist profit on a non-racist basis, meaning you had Hawaiian and Asians working together, not Hawaiians banning Chinese language and enslaving Chinese, not Chinese banning Hawaiian language and forcing Hawaiians to work for less than 10% of their labor value for a capitalist tiny minority. But Hawaiians and Chinese collectively working together in hui, which is a Hawaiian and Asian word. It's interesting. It's a Hawaiian, Chinese, Vietnam, and Maori word. Vietnamese. It's a word that spans. It's the word hui. It spans across. And I have entire streams just about that word that I've done about a year ago. It's a word that actually. See if I can find that. It's a word that spans across thousands of miles of the Pacific and Asia. It's a word that is in. It's a word that has a meaning. Shoot, I don't know if I'm able to find it. It's a hui in Hawaiian. So it's a word that has a meaning in Hawaiian, in Chinese, and Maori and Vietnamese, and it spans across thousands of years because direct contact between Hawaii and China was not very much, at least not within several centuries, and for a lot of the Pacific, it was not. The contact was, although there was contact, but it's a word that actually has a meaning: club, association, society, corporation, company, institution. But really, it's these are all English words. But what it means is coming together. It can mean coming together not just to do work. It could be, hui, come here and we're going to work together to paddle this canoe. We're going to build this Hawaiian lo'i, Let me start get the Hawaiian. We're gonna work in the Ahu system, right? We're gonna come together and we're gonna work in this taro patch. We're gonna work collectively in this fish pond to build the fish pond. We're gonna work to build this hale or hut. There's nobody making money from that economic activity, right? It's not just economic activity; it's also political activity because we're gonna discuss issues at the luau. It's a entertainment and it's a festival, what it actually is, but it's also political activity where we're gonna discuss. Are we going to build more lo'i patches here? Where should we divert the water to next based on discussions we have? But these are collective. It's sort of like the concept of an individual or a handful of individuals hoarding all the resources, right, for themselves is like, it's like unheard of. It's just not, it doesn't make any sense, right? Not to say that nobody tried that, because there are stories in Hawaiian mythology where one chief out of 99, like the myth of the flying taro, one ali'i tries to hoard wealth, and then the other 99 communities come together and they do actual restorative justice, which is they simply explain to that ali'i, please stop doing this because this is not our way. If you continue, you will have to be exiled or worse, right? So we don't want to have to punish you severely, but you have to stop hoarding in a Greek, Roman, British, and American way. Stop taking excess amounts of the resources and giving them to yourself and denying the will and the respect and the well-being and the material conditions of the rest of the community. And so it's actually a specific legend that it actually, what it doesn't say says more than what it says, which is that there isn't any capitalism in Hawaii in a certain period of time before the colonial era. Now, of course, colonization did things and Hawaiians had to fight back against that. But prior to that, there was no such thing as mass accumulations of anything. And so by extension, so economic, the political, and the entertainment, the social, the cultural, the religious, all these things are not compartmentalized out in that way. Decisions are made collectively, and then when a specific task, like let's say the farming and the terracing and the regenerative lo'i agriculture, which again which fed everyone, maintained the environment for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. And also, we only work 2 to 3 hours a day to feed everybody, used with our style of agriculture in Hawaii. It's a very advanced agriculture that no Western country or so-called advanced civilization has been able to produce. And the United States has made multiple islands uninhabitable. And we have no food security. We import over 50% of all the food comes in. Where Hawaiians, with again 2 to 3 hours of work, we fed every single person. 100% food security, like 1/3 the work that with the modern advanced technology we do today. So, long story short, that's how you can have democracy, is if you have the potential, if you don't have a minority of people accumulating the resources, deciding for other people. I mean, both in economic terms, in the governmental, but it's really, these are in a certain sense, the tyrannical, non-democratic nature of Greco-Roman and then feudal Europe, colonial Europe, and modern Western capitalist, imperialist Western societies, like, demand compartmentalization in order to mass disinform the population, right? You have to pretend like government and business are separate, and you have the business department, economics department, which only teaches science fiction in the U.S. and in the West, and then you have the political science department, and then you have the voting and government happens here, and then there's the business over there. Whereas what the board of directors in a capitalist corporation, again, the board of directors, right? That was another point. In the economics, right? Everybody gets a vote in the government. That, number one, you can't vote against the interests of the rich and the white and the colonizer in the West, in the U.S. And then inside of the corporation, you have, it's not, inside the corporation, where actually tons and the businesses, where a minority of major shareholders that make all the decisions, the 80 to 90% of all decisions inside, 80 to 90% of all shares of all businesses are owned by, a tiny fraction of the population, like 1 to 5% of the population. It's dwindling also. And so the board that votes inside the businesses about, for example, the Waltons or the executives of Amazon with Jeff Bezos and the board of directors there, they get together and they vote, should we expand here? How much should we pay the workers? Well, obviously the Amazon board and all the executives decide to pay Bezos another billions of dollars of bonuses this year. He makes literally 2.5 million to 3.5 million more than the average Amazon fulfillment center worker, or just the average Amazon worker, period. Moving boxes, the secretaries, etc., doing all the actual work. And of course they do it because it's not democratic. It's democratic in the way that Greece and Rome were democratic, which is rich white guys decide to give themselves more money and all the power. And the CEO and the board of the CEO, the CFO, the CTO, and the CEIOs elected by $1 one vote by the shareholders, who are all the plutocracy, and it's a circle jerk of all the rich guys are on. The CEO of one is a revolving door and is the board of the other, and the CEO of that other corporation is also on the board of it's just a giant fucking white rich guy circle jerk skull and bones sausage party, white very very pale sausage party. And so all that together means that all the major decisions in the business sphere, which really shouldn't really be separated out in that way, which is again the majority of where you spend your waking life in your 8 hours a day, right? As Richard, I agree with Richard Wolff in that sense. That part of your life is completely controlled, and the output of the society, and those huge decisions that make or break. Are you gonna get your living wage, or are you gonna get paid 90% of your rent, and then you're gonna be homeless, right? Those decisions are made are by the employer, and that's not the way that they should be made. They should be made collectively, and at cooperatives like Mondragon and other cooperatives like Huawei, actually, the highest paid person is decided. The cap on the maximum pay of the director, who is not the CEO because it's a democratic workplace, is set by the workers, and it's I think it's 6 times is the maximum. And currently the CEO, the director of is hired by the workers at Mondragon, and also it's only 4.5 times. So it's not very much more. Now they do more work and they have more seniority. It's basically it. But they're not paid 2.5 million times more like Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates or any of the people in every Western country, including France and including Germany. None of these places have control on any of these things. And again, Europe is not really they have no countries in Europe. They're all a state of the United States. So, and that's why they're all going to go freeze and starve, because they're doing whatever America says. So the capacity of democracy is not just what the West calls the public sphere. Again, that's why I don't like public-private prisons. The public sphere votes for the mayor and the governor and the government, whether that is democratic or not. It's really like, if you don't have democracy in the business economic workplace, that also precludes ever having democracy in the public sphere. But you see what I'm saying? Because if you don't have democracy in the workplace, then you have vast accumulations of capital, because the rich guys decide to give themselves more money, and then they can buy the politicians that make no democracy in the public sphere. So if you have no democracy in the business sphere, then you cannot have democracy in the government sphere. On top of, if you have racism in your entire sphere, then you don't have democracy in your country. You see, all these things are constantly interplaying with each other. And that's why I say this breaking it off. Here is the social issues where we talk about racism, and they have a bunch of white people calling themselves leftists say, don't talk about IDPO, right? When you bring up racism, and they say, we'll just talk about class. But this is this ridiculous Western waffle brain bullshit that it's about compartmentalizing and separating out these things as if they're separate, and we can't talk about one because that stops the other one. No, it's like all of these things impact all the others. And if you don't, having the social issues, lack of social equality, which is what democracy is aspiring towards, precludes and stops and hinders the workplace democracy, because you can divide the working class into the black and the white, and then you say, well, we'll pay off some white people to allow capitalism to continue, which is what the U.S. keeps doing in the 1870s. And that's the 1950s when they undid all. The Cold War was about buying off the white men working class and separating them from the women and the black people. and then whatever socialist communist parties existed in the 20s, 30s vaporize. So the social sphere, the political, the government sphere, and the business sphere are, in a large sense, is artificial constructions of, plutocratic, oligarchic, Greco-Roman, British, Anglo-Franco-American ways of existing, and they're artificial, but it's very efficient because people go, oh, well, I got to vote, and so that doesn't, so whatever, when I go to my shitty job at McDonald's, I can just be a cog and complain, and then not figure out that what happens in the McDonald's actually determines the options that I get when I go to the voting. But you see, what happens inside of your workplace and your business determines what options you're going to get when you show up to the Lincoln Elementary School or you mail in your vote for the governor or president. Because if you don't have democracy inside of your workplace, you're not going to get democracy inside of your government. Because they're just going to buy the government. You see? So, anyways. And if you don't have anti-racism and anti-sexism and anti-LGBTQ plus rooted out, and patriarchy rooted out of your social sphere, well, then the rich are gonna use that to break up the workplace, and then they're gonna buy the government again, and then you're fucked again. So anyways, you see what I think you see what I'm saying. And long story short, it is late in the day, and I've been talking for many hours. And also, workplaces are not democratic, where wealthy board members and shareholders make decisions rather than all workers. I.e., in a cooperative, then you don't have full democracy either. U.S. is an oligarchy, and in that sense, as all Euro-colonial predecessors were. And that even more so. So you see, that's where Hawaii's robust system of worker cooperatives with the world's first universal healthcare, nationalized collective industries, and anti-imperialist, meaning democracy within, from country to country, right? All of that together, right, with racial equality, all of that together is what, what collectively in a relational, in a systemic, interconnected webwork of systems makes the actual democracy of Hawaii of the 1800s, or the democracy of Vietnam or Cuba or China of the 2020s, right? And the non-democracy of the democracies, according to Washington Post and German universities and the British royalty. It's really funny when the British royalty say Russia is not democratic. It's fucking hilarious. Is it not? It's like, you're a fucking royalty. What the fuck do you have a king for? Your current prime minister of Britain wasn't even elected, and you're talking about how there's no democracy in China and in Russia. Anyways. But that's... Anyway. Let's do a little ad because I haven't done that in a while. So anyways, if you would like to support indigenous people and the things that we do here, consider checking out some of these video games like Neofeud, which is, speaking of feudalism, monarchy, royalty, and the intersections between hereditary privilege, economic inequality, ostensible democracy. Here's a game that's about all those topics in a cyberpunk, tasty, neon, and hippie Terminator, and jailbroken, Matrix agent filled cyberpunk rapper.
The Illuminati created us. They wanted to build a god with their own hands, and instead they created us.
Just because I'm made of silicone and aluminium, I must be doing something wrong. That's machine stereotyping, that is.
That's reality, that is. Machines are second-class citizens.
Humans are sentient persons by default, ma'am. They have personhood by heredity.
There are thousands upon thousands of overqualified slum dwellers. You are my peon. Don't you get it?
This wasn't a job. It was always just an excommunication sentence.
We're pawns in a feud bigger than we can imagine. Turn the cogs of the machine before Leviathan grinds you up and swallows you and yours.
We don't get to choose our hand, comrade. Prince, peon, rich, poor, human, robot.
I invented the crux of the royal's power, the secret to consciousness, our existence itself, the meaning of life.
I'm the $6 billion baller. Not some troubled youth.
You are my greatest creation of all.
I had to build my own family. I hate your son.
I'm happy to smash all of the crowns and throw the gold shards down to the people. I will be the iconoclast queen.
But who makes you queen anyway? You? You in whose army, princess? You in whose army?
Okay, so anyways, Neofeud is not coming soon. It is already out, and you can get Neofeud on you can get it on Steam and also on itch.io. It is the cyberpunk game that I was discussing on the Indigenous Game Devs panel yesterday. Neofeud is, again, yeah, it's on Steam, it's on itch.io. It does support everything that we do here. If you like adventure games, cyberpunk games, both, consider checking it out, wishlisting it if you don't have $14.99 right now, or picking it up, because it really does help to support what we do here. And it's like Disco Elysium, but with more cyberpunk characteristics. It's like Stray, but without a cat protagonist. It's like Cloudpunk, except you're not flying in cars all the time. But it's cyberpunk in that sense, and but it is a game that has the kind of politics, and it is a game that I was basically a solo dev on. I did the writing, the music, the art, and the programming of this video game. I'm currently working on the sequel as fast as humanly possible. I was in fact working on Neofeud 2 this morning before I started this stream, so looking forward to finishing that sometime soon. Yeah, it does support everything we do here. Also, Pigeon with Gun. I mean, actually, this game is actually kind of in line with what we're talking about, because Pigeon with Gun is a silly action comedy game where you play a pigeon with a gun, but it also does have a lot of political commentary in it. Actually, you know what? I'm going to play the gun enrichment part, because that part is actually kind of applicable. I think I posted that. Did I post that? I think I posted it on Instagram. Also, yeah, follow Holly on Instagram and on Twitter. I forgot. Yeah, Holly's my partner, of course, that helps make sure all of our streams go according to plan. And it's really very much, we are very much thankful here at the Silver Spoon Cooperative for all of Holly's work. Hey, let's play this one. It's election day. This is my send up to American politicians. Actually, if you look very closely, watch this. So again, this is a scene from Pigeon with Gun, and Holly actually plays that Eldritch Terror, the nasty floating Valentine's card.
It's my worst nightmare. No Pigeon, not Count Dracutron, and even more Eldritch Terror. It's Danny Cutie, that creepy vintage Valentine's card.
Won't you be my Valentine?
Yeah, Pigeon, I know he has wings, a hat, and a gun like you, but you can't be Danny's friend.
Don't listen to him. We can be besties forever, lovebird.
Don't fall for it, Pigeon. Trusting hearts are Danny Cutie's prey. He lures you in with his pretty words and cherubic chubby cheeks, and then he rips your ticker out, like Kano, or that Temple of Doom guy, or liberal politicians.
I have no idea what that rude reptile is talking about. I'm just in search of true love.
Plus, Danny Cutie works for corporate sponsor. Look, he's got that globe emoji for a cutie mark.
You see? It's plutocracy. See? He tells you one thing, and then he does another thing. That's why we don't have democracy in the United States. And also, he has a literal corporate sponsor tattooed on his butt like a My Little Pony, but human and bad.
Oh, there is that. But I'm so cute. Fine, but I'm stealing your heart anyway. The easy way or the horrifically painful way, Pigeon.
You see? This is Stacey Abrams and Joe Biden. Ripping your heart out after you gave them your heart, you know? I love you, Obama.
I'll Kentucky fry you for that, Tweety. I'm coming for your heart. Shot through the heart. You give love a bad name.
Anyway, so that very well done, excellent job to Holly for Holly voice acts the Eldritch Terror of Danielus Cutimus, Danny Cutie, the creepy Valentine Day card. He's not literally a politician. I don't think that's ever mentioned, but that's what I was thinking about when I added that character to the game. And one more I want to show is where is my I have one of where is his name? The Gunner Richmond, who is this big bad guy. Is the board? You know, he's one of those dudes. You know, who owns your sham government. Here we go.
I'm the SEO of corporate sponsor.
The SEO? What the heck is that?
The super executive officer. I've got stacks of money as tall as skyscrapers. And skyscrapers made out of guns. And guns that shoot money, called mega banks.
You nasty sleazeball! You kidnapped the president!
You fool! Rich guys like me don't need to kidnap presidents. We own your sham government.
Oh, I mean, you kidnapped Professor Nix. Not that I care, I'm just saying.
You're pretty sharp for a one-eyed snake. Then what do you and your trigger-happy bird brain think you're gonna do about it?
We're gonna end your money-grubbing monopoly on money guns, and the gun money, and rescue the professor. Duh.
And just how do you plan to do that, lizard boy?
We're gonna shoot you. A lot.
Don't chicken out now. Wow, nobody shoots Richmond, not without paying first. You poor people lost things.
Anyway, so that's another little sneak peek. So that's a trailer, little ads for Pigeon with Gun. So if you want to check that one out, that's another one of the Silver Spoon games that I made in about a month or so. And yeah, Holly, it's a part of a collaboration with the Lounge, and and Holly voices multiple characters in that as well. And it's a game that's about fuck capitalism and why you don't have no democracy, despite you have an election in the U.S. today. He says it right there, right? He's like, I don't need to kidnap your president. I just own your sham government. Your government's a sham. So, anyways, so I think that yeah, you can pick that up. And yeah, thanks, Big Teal, super executive officer. I was thinking, what would like a 12-year-old boy who's like making this game? What would he think would be cooler than a CEO? Like Elon's a CEO, but what's even more big and tough than that? The super SEO, because SEO actually stands for like, you know, search engine optimization. But he like a 12-year-old looking at Google saw the word SEO and was like, oh, that must be like the king of the CEOs, the super executive officer. Anyways, so Pigeon with Gun is full of all kind of silly comedy stuff like that. Also, you can find games on itch.io like Neofeud and Decolonators, where you can get a game that's about kicking capitalist colonizers' butts out of your country. So Decolonators is about democracy in action. It's when countries don't do country-to-country democracy. And Decolonators is about Vietnam voting really hard, the hard way, against U.S., you know, U.S. was like, we're going to do this, and Vietnam was like, we vote no with an AK-47 and a Soviet tank. Speaking of Russia. And so Decolonators is a game where you kick capitalist colonizers' butts out of your country and decolonate. You know, people talk about decolonization at universities. Oh, decolonize this, decolonize my class, decolonize my game, decolonize my, decolonize literature, decolonize movie, right? You know, I'm on stolen indigenous land. Oh, how about we decolonate your ass. How about that? For real. Anyways, Indigenous Star is another game that's I'm recently worked on. That's a game from a native Hawaiian perspective about an empire arriving on your planet to eradicate and plunder, heal the land and people, prevent erasure of your native language and culture, confront invaders before it's too late. And this is a game that is it's like a 2001: A Space Odyssey, Star Wars sort of environment. It's in space, but it's really the story of indigenous peoples like myself. So if you want that, that's Indigenous Star. And you can also get Holly's book, Woman, which is about women raised. Speaking of undemocratic, you know what else is not democratic? Evangelical Protestant Christianity is not, because it's patriarchal and it doesn't give half the population equal say and democratic votes in the decisions. And so patriarchy is not democratic. You don't have a democracy because you have patriarchy, period. And so Woman is about is a story of the Bible told through the eyes of Mary, and it is a very, very good and not very long 2,000 words story that is a hot take on all of that crap. And it is also free, or you can throw us some money when you pick that thing up. Also, don't forget, you can support us at patreon.com/Neofeud. Yeah, exactly. Hashtag decolonate. It's like don't bloviate, don't word salinate in your university document. Decolonate, anyways. I'm not just throwing shade at specific university. I'm just a lot of Western discourse about decolonization waters down what it means to actually decolonize, which means actually get the land back in the hands and economic concrete control of people's lives, as well as the land that was stolen in the hands of indigenous people. Patreon, you can support us, get access to the Silver Spoon Discord, get access to behind the scenes things of what we're doing, help us reach the goal so that we can keep on doing these streams and events for you. As I said earlier, we do need to keep the lights on. We don't have any funding. We don't have any grants. I don't have any big businesses that I'm working for, which is how we can keep doing this kind of streams that try to tell the truth as best as we can from a native Hawaiian indigenous perspective. So if you want to keep getting that, please consider $1, $3, $5, $20, whatever you can afford per month to help us think of what is the value of the streams and the education to you, and try to give us what that amount is per month if you can. And also, you can follow at Silver Spoon Games at octodon.social for at Silver Spoon Games at octodon.social for my. Everybody's joined Mastodon, and it's slowing to a crawl now. It's kind of irritating, but it's whatever. I threw a little bit of shade at Mastodon, but it needs a wake up call sometimes. But also, it is a decentralized, non-capitalist, federated, open source social media platform that does have great potential in its structure. Mastodon, unlike Twitter, cannot be bought by any single entity or individual like Elon Musk can buy Twitter. It is decentralized and a federation of different servers that can connect to or disconnect from. It can kind of vote with their linkages, who they want to be connected to. And you can join any one of these servers. You don't just go to mastodon.com and join the Mastodon. You can join any server that anyone can start one. A small one, a big one, of any size. So the architecture of Mastodon is more peer-to-peer. It's more decentralized in ways that are positive. I think, some people argue for democratic. Anyways, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole of discussion about that, but at Silver Spoon Games at octodon.social, at Silver Spoon Games at mastodon.social for the game stuff. You can follow at Silver Spoon Guy for my personal takes on Twitter, at Silver Spoon Games minus the E in silver for the game stuff, Silver Spoon Instagram, Silver Spoon Games on Facebook. Also, we have other things like Terminus Cyberstar is another game that is low poly cyberpunk immersive sim in the vein of Deus Ex and System Shock. It's like Cyberpunk 2077 in the sense that it is a cyberpunk RPG, 3D one. And it's a game that I'm the content director and lead writer of. It is set in the universe of Neofeud and Neofeud 2 and Terminus Machina, which are all kind of conjoined into what is sometimes called by the producer, Aaron Victoria. He's sometimes calling it the Silververse. So as long as Marvel and the Silver Surfer don't come with their armies of lawyers for me, I'm okay with the Silververse. But Terminus Cyberstar is a game that is in the is one of the games that I am closely connected with, and so if you want to check that out, it's at Terminus C. You can also join the Discord there, anyways, sorry, I'm just reading the chat real fast, and also you can follow Holly at the Tech Fairy, at mod voice actor and partner here at Silver Spoon Games, producer, writer, and mod for Design Attack Arcade Nix. That is the we're trying to think about what do we call the lounge? The haunted hostess of the lounge, a liminal digital cabaret. I mean, it sounds really cool. It does. But the lounge is a Twitch streamed variety and music show, and that is partially interactive, like in a tabletop role playing sense, and that Holly, my partner, is directly producing and involved in, and also Pigeon with Gun is a direct tie-in to the world of the lounge, and so check out. They're currently planning the winter special, which is going to be coming up soon, and so that's going to be fun. And also Holly is writer educator here, primary caregiver, parent, teacher, and also is doing lots of very important administrative work and keeping schedules and things going. And Holly is also tweeting stuff like this. That's important for people to know. And Big Teal knows what we're talking about. Big Teal's been in there. And so anyways, that's pretty much it. Thanks a lot for watching. It's 2:00. I gotta go eat food, and then I'll be back in the evening for the evening stream, and be chilling out. And I'm not sure what we'll be doing exactly. Figure something out. But thank you so much to all these awesome people on the list. Without your support, there's no Silver Spook streams. There's no Silver Spook Cooperative. There's no Silver Spook Hui. So I just want to say a big thank you. I mean, if you haven't considered joining the people that support indigenous people like these people. Thanks so much to all these people, because without it we would be, I might just be working for some crappy corporation, and there would be no Silver Spook panels. There would be no, I helped put the indigenous, I don't want to take all the credit for it, but that big indigenous game devs panel that just happened, the indigenous devs panel that happened. I cannot find it when I want to find it. But thanks to all of those. This big panel that happened at the University of British Columbia. If I wasn't being supported, this might not have happened either, because I would not be able to do the work and the connecting work to help put this panel together. Because I was the one who reached out to all the other people, and I said, Megan, Santo, Miranda, do you guys all want to be in the Indigenous Features in Games panel? Otherwise, it would just be a bunch of colonizer bullshit at this panel. You know what I'm saying? I'm not. It wouldn't just be that, but we wouldn't have this event. So you also support me helping other indigenous people do big events like this and help connect, because then my mind isn't swamped with just trying to make money through some other way, and I can have time and energy to do this stuff, right? Because it does really alleviate the time, not worrying about whether the electricity is going to turn off or we're going to have roof and stuff like that. So thank you very much again. I'm sorry, I have the words on the screen. That's what I meant to show. So thanks again to everybody who helped support Silver Spook Cooperative, because all these things become possible with your continued support. Thanks Leon, and good to see you, Emma, Big Teal, and Holly again. Until next time, keep your safe pause. Be excellent to each other. I didn't say, you vote however you want. Just remember, democracy is more than just a vote. It matters, like the economics, the society, what you're doing, the household, and all the other aspects of existence matter too. To make a quality democracy and to make a good alt-goth PLC show, it requires probably at least one Jordan Peele to executive produce it. And that has nothing to do with what I was just saying. But anyways,